Runlud is a world where people are born with skills. Because of this, people were able to develop civilization. People rely on skills in everything they do. It is a world where skills rule. However, there is something that people do not yet suspect, that among the zero, that is, people who do not have the skills, there is a chef. In the middle of the forest, a bear runs furiously at great speed. A knight in shining armor chasing the beast uses his light speed skill. In the blink of an eye, it approaches the beast like lightning. Knight Asel jumps on the beast and delivers one powerful blow to the beast's back. The bear lets out one last pained roar before falling dead. Asel quietly tries to catch her breath. Fram approaches her with joyful cries, praising her partner and saying that it was not for nothing that she was called the strongest holy knight. Asel Gwynvilen is an SS rank adventurer, and her skill is sonic speed. She puts her sword back in its sheath. Asel looks at the girl emotionlessly and tells her to start collecting resources from the monster instead of chatting. Farm Rislam is an S-rank adventurer, and her skill is flame. Fram just rubs the back of his head awkwardly and says that Asel could do it herself. She replies that she is busy checking the area and after Farmer. Sighing in resignation, she nevertheless takes on the task of collecting resources from the still warm body of the monster. She stands over the body of the beast with huge garden-like scissors. Farm looks at the monster, which is a bear, only B rank. Farm examines the claws on the beast's paws and notes that it would be difficult to get claws from such a monster. However, she still applies the scissors to the claws. While Pharma tries to cut off the beast's claws, Asel, turning away, says that there is nothing they can do, because if they do not bring evidence, they will not receive a reward from the guild. The residents also need to be sure that the monster is really gone. Elizabeth Close comes up behind the hard-working Pharma and hugs her. She is an S-rank adventurer, and her skill is holy healing. She gently hugs Pharma's shoulders, sweetly asking her not to nag and to be a good girl. Pharm suggests that Elizabeth try to gather resources herself. However, Elizabeth politely declines, saying that she would rather pray for the one doing it. Pharm is not satisfied with this answer, but she resigns herself to it, because she is already finished anyway. Asel, hearing this, suggests to her comrades to go back, because there is nothing more for them to do here. Suddenly, an unfamiliar voice calls the girls away. A young guy appears in front of the girls, and judging by his clothes, bag, and equipment, he is a traveler. He asks the girls if he can take the monster if they don't need it. The girls look at him, puzzled, completely not understanding what he is talking about. Asel can't understand the boy's words and why he wants to take the monster. She also wonders what such a skinny boy is doing in the middle of a forest full of dangerous monsters. The young man sees that the girls are not answering him and asks his question again. Suddenly, Asel reaches for the hilt of her sword. She asks the young man what he is going to do with the monster's body. She says, with a stern expression, that if he was going to conduct some dangerous magical experiments, then she, as a holy knight, cannot allow it. The young man, with a completely calm and casual face, says that he is going to simply eat the monster. There is complete silence. A few moments later, the girls repeat his words in surprise, not believing what they heard. Asel tells the young man in surprise that the monster's meat is inedible, because it is too tough and the fat is too dense. Elizabeth adds that monster guts are also incredibly tough and the lowest grade of meat. She doesn't believe that there are people who would eat such meat. Farm's face is one of pure disgust. She breaks out in a cold sweat and remembers how she once tried monster meat and still feels sick at the thought. Pharma confidently says that monsters taste terrible. However, the young man is not at all bothered by their words. He begins to take off his equipment, asking again whether they need a monster or not. The girls still can't give a clear answer because they have so many doubts. Then the three of them stand in a circle to discuss the situation. They try to focus and come up with their own arguments and assumptions. They assume that the guy was just lost and so hungry that he went crazy and wanted to try the monster's meat. Suddenly they hear an animal approaching behind them and Asel immediately turns around. A wild wolf appears before the girls with beautiful, fluffy, and long fur and long, sharp claws. Asel realizes that it is not just an animal that stands before them, but a divine wolf. Asel becomes wary as she sees the animal approaching them. However, out of the blue, the wolf happily runs up to the boy like a big puppy. The boy calls the wolf One and says that he is a little late. and the wolf playfully repeats his name after the boy. He begins to stroke the wolf's smooth fur as it playfully cuddles up to the boy. The girls are surprised by the appearance of the divine beast, and Elizabeth replies that it is not often that one sees such a creature so close to a human. Estelle looks at everything that is happening, not believing her eyes. She realizes that this is most likely the divine wolf Fenrir, and it is said that when it reaches its adult form, it can cross 5 mountains in one jump. This divine beast can be compared in strength to the most dangerous S-rank monster. Asel had never heard of such a beast getting along so well with a person. Meanwhile, the young man looks at the monster's body with interest, and the wolf looks at the bear with appetite. After this, the young man takes off his backpack and takes out a large bundle, after which he straightens it out and places a giant leaf on the ground. Farm explains out loud to his companions that this is a yogu leaf. She says that this leaf is often used by travelers because it has useful properties such as thermal insulation. The young man folds his hands and, closing his eyes, begins to work. After this, he sticks his hand into the bear's body, through the open wound, and takes out one of the organs. He looks at the gallbladder appraisingly and is glad that it is still intact. Then he ties a small knot on top of the bladder. After that, the young man starts rummaging around in the monster's insides again. After he has gutted the animal, he lays out his spoils on a piece of yogu paper. The young man stands, satisfied with his work, wiping the blood from his hands with a small cloth. Farm and Elizabeth are sickened by the sight and smell. After that, the guy takes on the bear's carcass. First, he cleans it of fur. He cuts up the monster very skillfully and quickly, cutting out large chunks of whole meat. Asel silently notes his speed of work. She understands that the young man clearly has a skilled hand, and that this is not the first time he has done this, and that he already has experience in cutting up monsters. Moreover, he clearly did this not once or twice, but rather many dozens or even hundreds of times. Asel becomes even more interested in who this young man is. Suddenly, Farmer sniffs the air. The disgust disappears from her face, and she asks Asel if she can smell it. Elizabeth also removes the handkerchief from her face and notes that the smell is not at all what it should be. Asel agrees with him. She says that monster corpses usually smell of blood and rot, and scientists say that this smell comes from monsters eating people. However, taking a closer look at the pieces of whole meat in front of them, the girls realize that they not only smell, but also look quite appetizing. Asel, feeling that the monster's meat smells like regular meat, begins to doubt. She even thinks that this meat might be tasty. Farm turns to the guy and slightly awkwardly, stammeringly asks if the guy is going to cook this meat. The young man thinks. He says that the meat is quite juicy, so he decides that it would be best to stew it. However, Asel and the others hear fried beetles instead of the word stewing, since these words sound very similar. Then she turns to her comrades, but they are also confused. Asel is hearing about this method for the first time and does not understand what it is. She imagines pictures in her head with various beetles impaled on sticks. After that, she became very interested in the cooking process and began to watch the young guy with interest. He was using a strange device to make a fire from a piece of wood. Farm notices this and offers to help the boy light the fire, as her skill allows her to create flames. However, the boy stops her, not allowing her to come closer to help. He says that he is grateful to the girl for her offer of help, but he does not need her because the flame she creates will be too strong. Asel silently agrees with him and notices that the fire the young man has made is quite small. She also wonders if it would be possible to cook something on such a low fire. At this time, the young man finished cutting the meat into small pieces with a small camp dagger. Having finished this, he looks around in search of something. He goes a little into the forest where bamboo grows. After walking there for a while, he finds a suitable bamboo. Asel asks why the guy needs bamboo. She assumes that he is going to use it as a dish. The young man makes skillful and quick cuts to open a piece of bamboo, after which he places pieces of meat into it. After this, he wraps the bamboo tightly, tying it tightly with a thread. Having done this, he approaches the fire and places the meat wrapped in bamboo right in the middle of the fire. The others are surprised by his actions, as they have never seen anything like it. The meat is cooked over a fire, and during this process, the smell of the fire begins to emanate. It is felt even more strongly after the young man removes the bamboo and opens it, revealing delicious, ready-made meat inside. Everyone present smells an unusual odor, and the girls are amazed at how incredibly delicious the aroma is coming from the meat. Asel notes that the meat looks incredibly juicy and exudes a crystal-clear shine. Farm also says that the meat is covered in a beautiful amber color that is simply breathtaking. And Elizabeth, in turn, notices an appetizing smell, not believing that it comes from the monster's meat. Asel can hardly restrain herself. Her hands are so tempted to try some of this meat. Suddenly, out of the corner of her eye, she notices that the divine wolf has approached the meat and eaten some, swallowing it quickly. Immediately after that, the wolf began to howl joyfully, raising its muzzle to the sky. The girls are shocked to see the wolf's fur all fluffed up. Looking at the animal's reaction, Farm still can't believe that the meat is really that tasty. At this time, the young man strokes the wolf's fluffy fur, which continues to behave like a big, happy puppy. Asel can't believe that such a majestic beast, who inspires awe in the hearts of people, can be so happy. Seeing that even the divine beast appreciated the dish prepared by this young man, she can't help but feel curious and want to try a piece. However, she does not say anything out loud, and at this time the young man himself takes it upon himself to try his cooking. He takes a piece with a fork and puts it in his mouth, after which he also breaks into a satisfied smile. He calls the food incredibly delicious, with a smile full of pleasure. Asel, looking at this, swallows nervously. She finally decides to approach the guy. He turns to her and Asel, stammering, asks if they can try it too, since they want a piece too. The young man responds by teasing them slightly, asking if they really want to eat the monster's meat because it is tough and its fat is sticky, echoing their own words. The girls are a little embarrassed by the reminder of their own words spoken recently, and say that they really want to try. Asel says that since the young man has so piqued their interest, he should at least let them try. However, the young man is not greedy, so with a friendly smile he says that he is not at all sorry, after which he serves the girls the meat on one plate. He calls the dish bear stew, calling it Dish Makana's specialty, meaning his own. Dish hands them a plate, one of them holding the other. The girls look with delight at the finished meat, which is still steaming warmly. Farm says the dish looks even better up close, and Elizabeth starts to drool as she watches the delicious juices pour out of the meat. Asel, in turn, takes the plate in her hand and scoops meat onto a spoon. She says that no matter how the dish looks, the main thing is the taste, so she puts a whole spoon in her mouth, wanting to make sure that the taste of the meat matches its appearance. The other girls follow her example and also try a piece, after which their minds are torn apart by the wave of taste. They are silent for a few seconds, after which Asel screams her admiration, calling the food delicious. She starts to devour the meat greedily. She says that she simply cannot believe that she is eating monster meat right now, because she feels like every piece is literally melting in her mouth. Elizabeth, in turn, admires the soft, sweet taste of the meat, saying that it's as if she's being carried away by a waterfall of sauce, and she's drowning in this incredible taste. Farm, however, is surprised to hear that it is nothing like what she has ever tasted before. She realizes that the meat has become soft because Dish has made cuts in it with a knife beforehand. She is also glad that this dish does not have that horrible smell of monsters, and she feels a delicate aroma coming through her nose and enveloping her whole body. Suddenly it dawns on her. Asel asks Pharma if she is okay, as she looks shocked. She says with surprise on her face that she can no longer remember the horrible taste of the monster meat. However, Asel doesn't believe her words at all, saying that with such terrible taste, it's definitely impossible. Farm understands this, but nevertheless, the taste of that terrible meat that had haunted her all these years simply disappeared as soon as she tried this stewed bear. The girls continue to eat the meat with delight and appetite, rejoicing in how such terrible meat has become a delicious first-class dish in the hands of a skilled chef. The three girls are in bliss when suddenly a thought comes to Asel's head, and she is immediately distracted from her food. She turns to Dish, after which she roughly grabs him by the shoulders and with a terrible angry face asks how he did it. She starts shaking him madly, asking where he learned to cook so well. Because even though they saw him cook this monster with their own eyes, it just can't be that good. Luckily, Farmer manages to pull her partner away from the poor guy. Dish is quite hurt by Asel's actions and explains that he did not use his skills while cooking. However, Asel doesn't believe his words at all. She asks Disha how he, without using any skills, was able to make something so tasty from such tough, foul-smelling monster meat. In response, Dish only says that he simply cannot use the skills because he's zero. Acel asks again, not understanding what he means. In response to this, Dish calls himself a zero cook without any skill. Dish finally introduces himself to the girls and says that he is a cook and a zero. The girls aggressively pounce on him with questions. They ask how he could subdue a divine beast without training or cook such a delicious dish from monster meat. The girls shout over each other until Dish finally interrupts their stream of questions. He resigned himself and decided to tell the girls his story from the very beginning. It all started 10 years ago. Disha, who was still a child at the time, in tattered and worn-out clothes, is thrown out into the street. A tall and strong man standing in front of him tells the child that he is fired and demands that he not show up there again. The man calls the boy a zero out loud, which is heard by passers-by walking down the street. They begin to whisper gossip about Dish. Some say that he is the child of a scientist who died from the monster's curse. The man, meanwhile, tells Dish that it is, of course, commendable that a child without skills is trying to feed himself. However, they started receiving a lot of complaints after they hired Dish. The man says that you can't tell customers that the food is not fresh or the water is dirty. The boy is no longer welcome in the establishment. The boy gets up from the ground, shaking the dirt off his clothes. He says casually that he was only taking care of the customers instead of the careless owner. He also says that he is sure that even a person without skills can cook dishes better than the local cooking, and that the man cannot fire him because he quit himself. For these words, the angry man hits Dish with all his might. He scolds the child and threatens to throw him into the mountains for such words. Everything darkens in Dish's eyes. Some time passes. Dish wakes up from a faint, into which he fell after a strong blow to the head. He sits on the ground, feeling a strong pain in his body, as the boss who hit him has a rather heavy hand. Having more or less come to his senses, Dish looks around. Suddenly, he realizes that he is not in the city, but somewhere in the middle of the forest. He has absolutely no idea where he is, and it is very dark around him. Suddenly, he understands. Dish sees a forested mountain landscape far off on the horizon. He understands that the boss, or rather the former boss, must have really thrown him out into the mountains. It was so dark and scary around that Dish, being only a child, could not force himself to move until dawn. After dawn, Dish began to wander through the forest. He had not slept all night, and the forest was filled with monsters. On top of that, he was terribly hungry. Suddenly, he heard a sound and stopped. He sees a B-rank monster, the two-horn, not far from him. It is a huge two-horned horse. Unlike unicorns, it prefers darkness. Although it is a herbivore, it is still a very dangerous monster. The two-horn uses its horns to get the fruits of trees and eats. Dish watches the monster from behind the bushes. He remembers seeing these monsters in his father's book, but this is the first time he's met one in real life. He understands that this monster is unlikely to be eaten, and Dish has nothing to kill it with. However, Dish does not despair. Because the trees grow edible fruits and the river contains fish, and he can even hunt small animals, he is genuinely happy when he realizes that in the mountains, no one will ever yell at him, and he can just play the fool and cook to his heart's content. He decides to satisfy his hunger by eating the fruit that the bicorns were eating, as they looked delicious. He decides to try them. However, he fails. He lies down on the ground in defeat next to the fruit, whose shell is too hard to bite through. Suddenly, Dish notices a small, white mountain rabbit approaching his food. The rabbit grabs the fruit in its mouth and starts running away, and Dish tries to catch up with it. He lies down on the ground, meekly, knowing that he will never be able to catch the rabbit. He looks at his hands in despair. Dish knows that if he had, everything would be different. However, even in this situation, he still thought that he could survive. But still, without skill, he had nowhere to go and nothing to do. Dish still decides to accept his fate on the brink of despair and decides that he can only die. He closes his eyes and doesn't notice someone's shadow hanging over him. Suddenly, his head is covered in some kind of slime. Dish opens his eyes in fear and grabs the slime. He tries to grab hold of it somehow and take it off himself, because he can't breathe. And all because he was attacked by a slime, a monster of rank F. This is the weakest of monsters. Even children can defeat it. However, Every year, many adventurers die because of it in their sleep. It can be dangerous, but only if you are not careful. In an attempt to escape, Dish hits his head on a rock. With this blow, he hits something inside the slime, causing it to burst like a balloon and turn into liquid. Dish can finally catch her breath. After that, he examines the remains of the slime and notices a small ball next to him, with a thread coming from it, resembling some kind of internal organ. He realizes that this is the broken core of the slime, and that the slime most likely died because it split. Afterwards, Dish, covered in slime, rejoices at his incredible luck. However, he is still hungry. Dish looks at the small blob of slime goo and picks it up. He decides that the goo looks quite tasty, and that it looks like a sky blue jam. However, Dish immediately reminds himself of his father's words, who always said that monsters taste disgusting, and the slime is most likely the same. However, Dish's hunger makes him doubt. He hesitates for a long time, but finally decides and puts his fingers, which have a small amount of mucus on them, into his mouth. To his surprise, he discovers that the slime is incredibly tasty. At first he feels only sweetness, then a little bitterness. He even compares the taste of mucus to sugar water. He really likes the taste, in which a little bitterness allows the sweetness to fully reveal itself, and, on top of everything else, there is a pleasant aftertaste. Dish even feels like he suddenly has more energy, as this jelly is very refreshing. The jelly still feels firm when it first hits your mouth, but then melts right away. So Dish decides to call this premium jelly slime jelly. Sometime later, Dish is carrying the slime of 3 more slimes he caught in a bag made from his shirt. Only now is he beginning to wonder why they taste so good, because his dad told him that monsters taste terrible. He remembers that in his dad's book, it was said that the jelly part of slime is called slurry. He takes out the broken core of the slime and sees a thin vessel extending from it. There is another thin appendage on the core, and seeing small humps on it, Dish assumes that this is the slime's mouth. However, at this time, slime begins to flow from the end of the appendage. It falls on the leaves and begins to eat them. Then Dish realizes that it is most likely the slime's stomach. He concludes that the solution contains dissolved nutrients and sugar. He finally understands why he feels such a rush. It was most likely the sugar part that affected him. Dish decides to try again some of the jelly he had saved up. The jelly is still sweet, but now the taste is different. It's just awful. Dish describes the sensation as if he had eaten sweet, rotten meat or digested juice that left his throat raw. He even says it was 100 times worse than sweet pepper puree. Now the excess sweetness and bitterness have merged together, and Dish feels sick from the dissonance of these tastes. For him, this tastes worse than any scraps and rotten food he has ever eaten, and that it is like a real hell. Even though he only tried it once, Dean knows that the taste will haunt him forever in his nightmares. He finally understands what his father was talking about. Dish throws out the contents of his makeshift bag and looks at the spoiled jelly. He doesn't understand what happened to this jelly because it was so delicious not long ago. But now it's just awful, like it just went bad. Dish realizes that's probably true, and the jelly really did just go bad. He starts to think that maybe monster meat isn't bad, but just goes bad quickly, like that slime did. Then it makes sense why no one likes monster meat, because rotten meat definitely won't taste good. Dish comes to the conclusion that the meat simply needs to be cooked before it spoils. He realizes that if he is right, then the mountains are treasure trove. And although Disha has been constantly made a fool of and scolded for his lack of skill, he still wants to try a lot of dishes that no one has ever tried before. Now he can cook delicious food to his heart's content and proudly, with a joyful smile on his face, declares to the whole world that one day someone will definitely call his food delicious. That's how he became a cook, and as a zero cook, he decided that he would live in those mountains. 10 years later, Dish lies helplessly on his stomach on the ground. His stomach is growling loudly because he is very hungry. Ha! All this time he had learned a lot and had become more at home in the mountains than anyone else. However, lately he had been having terrible luck. He hasn't been able to catch anyone for a long time, and the grapevines he found earlier were eaten by monsters. Dish closes the hole and suddenly feels something touching his hair. He feels that it is someone's tongue, so he assumes that it is a dog. He already turns to the dog to tell him that, unfortunately, he is not tasty at all. However, before his eyes, instead of a dog, he sees a wolf. He notes that the wolf is simply huge, and its fur looks so fluffy that he wants to touch it. There's a silence. Dish and the wolf just look at each other, not moving. Suddenly the wolf leans towards him and sniffs. Then Dish starts rummaging through his pockets, looking for what the wolf is interested in. He takes a small ball out of his pocket and stands in front of the wolf, who happily sticks out his tongue like a playful puppy. Then Dish throws the ball towards the wolf, who catches it in the air. Having bitten the ball and felt the unusual taste, the wolf immediately begins to howl with pleasure. Raising the fashion up, Dish is happy that the wolf liked the food, and the wolf at this time happily purrs as if to say, "Woon." Suddenly, they both hear a sound behind them and turn around. A rather large slime approaches them on the ground between the rocks. Dish panics a little because the slime is at the worst time, because it is hungry, and it has no strength at all. He's already prepared to fight back, when suddenly the wolf stands in front of him. After that, he pounced on the slime and got rid of it with one paw. Disha is surprised by the wolf's incredible strength. Afterwards, he approaches the wolf and sincerely thanks him for protecting him. Dish realizes that this is the first time in his life that someone has stood up for him. The wolf simply licks Dish's face gently in response. Dish then says that he should thank the wolf properly. He hands him a bucket and asks him to bring some water from the nearby river. The wolf grabs the bucket in his mouth and quickly runs away, growling again, making the same sound. While the wolf went to get water, Dish was busy making a fire. By the time the wolf returned, the fire was ready, and Dish thanks the animal for his work. Dish starts cooking. He boils water in a large bowl on the fire, and in a small one, he places a solution of the slime defeated by the wolf. The wolf watches the process with interest while Dish explains that this method of cooking is called a water bath, and is used to cook ingredients that burn easily. He takes a bowl of slime and places it inside a larger bowl of boiled water. After the slime is boiled a bit, he places the bowl in a cold place to harden the slime. He puts the frozen mass on a plate and says that this is his original dish, called slime taffy. The wolf looks at the dish with delight and amazement. He purrs happily again, starting to actively eat the taffy. Dish also takes a small piece, explaining the principle of cooking to the wolf, his only interlocutor. He says the natural sweetness of the dish comes from the slimes eating not only various fruits, but also rock salt, for example. So the taste is richer than that of candies made from regular sugar. He also says that chefs who cook with skill can heat or cool food instantly. Therefore, the taste and texture of food can be greatly affected by sudden changes in temperature. Dish is clearly pleased that since he's a zero, he learned to cook this way, without relying on skills. Dish asks the wolf if he likes it, to which the wolf happily and contentedly purrs, rushing towards the youth. Dish happily pets the contented wolf. After some time, Dish finally decides to ask the wolf his name. The wolf only purrs again in response, making a sound similar to Huan. Dish realizes that the wolf cannot speak and decides to name the wolf Juan. He asks if he likes his new name, to which the wolf smiles happily. After some time, Dish and Juan are sitting together in the bushes, watching something, namely their future prey. It turns out to be several wild Eranx crows. They are difficult to catch, have high mobility, and always stay in flocks. Dish tells his companion that the meat of a wild raven is the most delicious, which obviously pleases the wolf. In response, Dish asks Juan to catch one of the ravens by the throat without damaging the body. At the same moment, Juan furiously attacks a flock of crows. Dish watches the whole carnage, accompanied by the loud and chaotic cawing of the crows. Juan is strong but uses quite brute force. However, in the end, he managed to catch the largest raven in the flock, for which Dish praises him and calls him an excellent hunter. After this, having built a small fire, Dish prepares the bird's carcass. He cuts off the bird's head and plucks the feathers. Then he uses a small torch with a flame on the end to char the carcass. He does this to get rid of any remaining small feathers. After that, he moves on to cutting, removing the legs and guts. After that, he carefully separates the meat from the bones. Dish looks at the big piece of meat and is happy about such a good catch, because this crow is the size of 3 ordinary birds. Juan is standing nearby and already sticks out his tongue, looking at the meat. However, Dish asks him to wait, because he is going to fry the meat. Dish cuts the meat into cubes, puts it on skewers and fries it. The result is a delicious raven shashlik. Dish hands one of the skewers, while the wolf looks at them with incredible joy and anticipation. Dish takes a bite of the other skewer as well. After tasting the meat, Dish and Wan were simply delighted with the incredible taste. Dish feels that as soon as you bite into the meat, the fat inside gives off a pleasant sweetness. It's a sweetness that only comes from high-quality meat. Plus, the pieces of meat are very crispy on the outside, but tender and juicy on the inside. Dish knows that even though these birds are predators, their diet is not limited to meat. They also eat fruits and nuts, which is why, he believes, Raven's meat acquires such a delicate and multifaceted taste. Dish and Wan continue to enjoy the meat, with Dish noting that it tastes nothing like cheap, tough meat, thanks to its rich flavor and tenderness. After the meal, Dish and Wan settle down comfortably on the ground. Wan surrounded Dish with his soft and long fur, lying down around him, and Dish in turn lay down lightly on the wolf's large body. He says that this is the third time he has eaten this dish, but this time, it was the most delicious. He's sure it is because he ate it with Wan, and says with a smile that he hopes to have his partner in the future. At this point, Dish finishes his autobiography, which he had been telling Asel, Elizabeth, and Farm all this time. However, looking at the girls, he notices that they are not listening to him, but are simply actively eating. He is indignant because he is no longer sure that the girls were listening to him at all. Asel tells him not to look at her like that because she heard everything perfectly well. But Dish clearly does not believe her. After this, Asel says that she also really wants to try fried raven, and Dish finally understands that no one cared about his story. He sighs resignedly, after which his usual friendly smile returns to his face. He says that if the opportunity arises, he will definitely cook this dish for them. In response to this, Asel immediately decides to go crow hunting right now. Farm reminds them that they were going to go to the guild to check in, and Elizabeth notes that it will soon be sunset. At this time, the Zero chef Dish Makan did not even suspect that one day the whole world would hear his name. In the mansion, in one of the rooms, Asel is sitting, already without armor, in an ordinary light dress with a necklace on her neck. She is sitting at a table on which there are many different dishes, but for some reason Asel looks depressed. Someone calls her away. Granson and Carol stand next to each other, looking at the lady with concern. Carol asks if the lady doesn't like what she cooked for her today. Granson says that the dish turned out great today, and politely asks the lady to try it. He even suggests that the lady doesn't eat because she's decided to go on a stupid diet. Carol Harness and Granson Marlem are the maid and butler of the Whelan household. Carol's skill is mixing, and Granson's skill is water attack. Asel looks at them and smiles, apologizing. She says she was just thinking, after which he takes a piece of meat and eats it. She confirms that the food is indeed delicious, and the beef is cooked just the way she likes it. She praises Carol for making a dish that is great for restoring stamina. She also praises Granson for serving excellent top-notch juice. However, deep down, the princess still knows that she still can't forget the taste of that monster dish maid. After dinner, Asel goes to the window and pushes it open with force. She has decided to go to the mountains tomorrow to find Dish. Even being the strongest holy knight, Asel is unable to resist. The next day, Asel really does come to the mountains, again with her armor and sword. She understands that she came to the mountains, but has no idea where to look for Disha. At this time, her stomach growls loudly from hunger. She also thinks that the young man may not live in this forest at all, but simply came from another city. Asel understands that she will most likely not be able to fight off the strong monsters because she's very hungry. However, she does not give up, because she is sure that fate itself connected them with his cooking. However, at that very second, a large bear comes out of the bushes right towards Asel. She is tense because she doesn't have a Groot now, and she's starving and has no strength. However, upon closer inspection, she suddenly decides that the bear looks really tasty. Therefore, out of hunger, she aggressively attacks the monster. However, before the knight can strike the bear with his sword, the divine wolf rushes at him, grabbing him by the neck with its mouth. Asel decides not to interfere, and, upon closer inspection, recognizes this wolf, because it was he who was with Dish that day. She admires how the wolf killed the bear with one blow, because even she would have a hard time defeating such a monster with one blow. This Fenrir had enough strength to do it. Acel understands that since the wolf is here, the one she came for must also be somewhere nearby. At this time, Dish comes out of the nearby bushes, praising Juan for his good work. Acel is terribly happy that she finally found Disha, and her reaction even scares him. He doesn't remember her right away. He only understands that he has seen her somewhere before. He thinks, trying to remember the girl, while Acel is amazed by his lightning-fast forgetfulness. Acel pulls herself together and realizes that she needs to calm down, because she is fussing too much. She is embarrassed to say right away that she came to taste Disha's cooking again, so she decides to just start a conversation first. She introduces herself and apologizes for disturbing him. She addresses him by name, which surprises Disha, and he praises Acel for her excellent memory. Acel aggressively shouts back that it is natural that she remembered his name, since it is difficult to forget someone who cooks so deliciously. After that, she immediately changes the subject. She says she's been wondering all along if Dish made a pact with the wolf. Dish pets Juan, who is fawning over him, and says that Acel calls him strangely, and that Juan is just his pet. Acel is silent for a second in confusion, after which she again attacks Dish with screams, not understanding how he even made a divine beast his pet, because they cannot be tamed. Dish casually says that he simply fed Juan some candy, which shocks Acel. Dish reminds her that he already told her this recently, but they were too busy eating at the time. Acel understands that she missed this part of the story. However, she still simply cannot believe that Dish tamed Juan with candy. Acel simply does not understand how the Fernir, which no one has ever managed to tame, so easily fell for candy. Acel then asks what skills Dish has, to which he reminds her that he has no skill, and Acel apologizes for her forgetfulness. Dish simply asks her to speak too politely, which pleases Acel, and she already wants to continue the conversation, when she is interrupted by a loud rumble from her stomach. She apologizes sheepishly and says that she hasn't eaten anything since the morning, and it will soon be dark. She feels ashamed to ask for such a thing, but she asks Dish if he has any food. Dish says that if we are talking about something edible, then the only food he has is the bear that Juan recently caught. Acel becomes even more embarrassed and asks if Dish can cook the bear again, like last time. He only apologizes and says that he can't today. Acel can't utter a word in response. She falls to the ground in despair. Dish clearly sees that the girl really wanted to try that dish again. He says he can't cook it now because there is no bamboo in the forests, and it is bamboo that contains the ideal amount of moisture for stewing. Acel doesn't understand where the moisture could come from in such a dry plant. Although she finds it hard to believe, if he says so, she believes him. Dish looks at Juan, who is standing over the carcass of the beast, wagging his tail and sticking out his tongue, and says that Acel is clearly not the only one who is eagerly awaiting his dish. Then he suggests Acel to go to his place. Acel is very embarrassed by such words, because she understands that a girl of her status should not go to visit. But as soon as Dish says that he will feed her deliciously, she immediately agrees to go to him. The three come to a huge tree with a wide trunk and powerful roots, among which stands a wooden door, to which a rough staircase leads. The heroes stand next to him. Acel, looking at this tree, wonders how old this huge tree is. Dish says he doesn't know either and calls the tree the Guardian. He explains that he calls it that because monsters, for some reason, don't come close to the tree, so it's very peaceful around it. He opens the door, inviting the guest in. He says that, however, rain and winds still penetrate inside, so it is quite cold inside. Dish notices that Acel is in no hurry to go inside, and asks why she is not going in. Acel sheepishly asks where everyone is, to which Dish replies that he lives alone. She looks confused and nervous, but inside she's panicking because she was lured into food and came to visit a guy, and is trying hard to convince herself that this isn't a date at all. Dish looks at the girl and asks if she wants to eat outside. Acel is clearly happy with this proposal. Then Dish says that they can eat outside since the weather is nice. However, in return, he asks to bring him dishes, to which Acel agrees. Dish made a fire, and again, he cut the meat into pieces. Acel notes for the second time how brilliantly he works and how easily he prepares the meat. She looks at the meat and realizes that even though this is the second time she watches Dish cook, she still can't believe that this is monster meat. This time, Dish puts a bowl of water on the fire, and, when it boils, puts pieces of meat into it. During the cooking process, Dish uses a ladle to remove the foam that appears on the surface of the water. Acel, watching Dish remove the foam by hand, asks if it wouldn't be easier for him to use holy water. She's heard that the foam appears because the meat is dirty. Dish recalls that they usually use the cleanse skill to get rid of the foam. Assel confirms that this is what holy water is used for and asks Dish how he cooks differently. Dish replies that he tried using water, but some of the flavor disappeared along with the foam, so he removes it manually. He takes out a small root and tells Assel that it is the root of a local plant, and it is called ginger. He offers Assel to try it. The piece of ginger is cut into strips. Assel takes one of the strips and puts it in her mouth. Afterwards, her face tightens from the sharp taste and tears well up in her eyes. She swallows the ginger with difficulty. She rants about how spicy it is, but it's a pleasant spiciness and it clears her throat very well. The more she chews, the more a special sweetness emerges. Dish is pleased that Assel appreciates the ingredient and says that ginger also warms well. Afterwards, Assel notices that her body is indeed warm. Dish says ginger has cleansing properties and is ideal for removing odor from meat. While the meat is cooking, Dish goes to a nearby pot and opens it. At that very moment, Assel smells a strange smell, which became especially noticeable when Dish took a piece of the mass lying in the peas. Dish holds out this foul-smelling mass on the board to Assel. Then he asks if she's tried miso yet. Assel, not knowing what it is, makes unpleasant associations because of the appearance and smell of the mass. Dish doesn't understand her reaction and says it's just fermented bean paste. Assel tries to mentally digest his words. She recalls that she'd heard of a method of preparation called fermentation before, but it was usually used to make liquor, and this was the first time she'd heard of beans being prepared this way. And yet, when she looks at miso, she still cannot make unpleasant associations that make her feel disgusted. However, she calms down, trusting Dish, believing that he will not use miso in the dish. However, in the same second, Dish completely adds all the miso to the water in which the meat is boiled, while Assel cannot believe her eyes at all. He says that after adding miso instead of sugar, he adds a taffy made from a slime solution. After that, he lets the meat cook for a bit, and soon the dish is ready. He places the meat in a deep bowl and serves his guest bear meat with miso. Assel smells the delicious aroma coming from the dish. However, her preliminary associations make her a little doubtful. While Assel was hesitating, Juan had already begun to actively eat his portion with a face full of pleasure. And while Dish gently strokes the contented Juan, Assel hesitantly takes a piece of meat and puts it in her mouth. At that very second, she feels a simply incredible taste in her mouth. She eats the wonderful, slow-cooked meat actively, noting its tenderness. She only has to bite into it and the pieces melt in her mouth. She continues eating the meat without stopping. She feels how the taste eventually envelops the tongue and fully reveals itself. And the ginger not only removes the unpleasant taste of the meat, but also leaves a refreshing aftertaste. She also feels how the miso complements the flavor, its salty taste perfectly highlighting the sweetness. When mixed, the miso and meat flavors complement each other perfectly. Assel mentally apologizes for comparing miso to less than pleasant things because it turns out to be a divine duo, filling her entire body with sweetness with every bite. She even thinks that miso was probably created specifically to go with meat. She finishes her entire portion and immediately asks for more. Dish is willing to give her more, but he also points out that if she continues to swallow chunks, her stomach may become upset. Assel doesn't listen to him, pouncing on a new portion of meat, saying that she will be careful, but to herself she understands that she simply cannot stop. In the end, all the meat was eaten. Assel says that both the stewed bear and the bear with meat were simply excellent. She also says that meeting Dish opened up a new world for her. She sincerely thanks the cook for the dishes he prepared and asks if she can come to him again. Dish agrees, saying that she can come to him anytime. Assel says goodbye and leaves, while Dish and Juan watch her go. Suddenly, Dish asks out loud why Assel came to the forest at all. Dish is sitting quietly at home, when suddenly he hears active hearing at his door. After which Assel bursts in. She loudly announces that trouble has happened. Dish says that since that day she came every day and he tries to remember her name, but makes a mistake, calling her Azazel. Assel in turn indignantly corrects him, even angry that he dared to think that her name is like a demon. Dish apologizes and decides to change the subject and asks her guest what happened to her. because she came earlier than usual. Asel finally says what's wrong, namely, she suddenly became much faster. Disha is not embarrassed by her words, because she was fast enough before. Because it would take a normal person a day to get to his house from the city. However, she manages to get there after completing tasks, and this is every day. Asel disagrees with him and demands that he look at the piece of paper she gives him. Dish takes the piece of paper and asks what it is, to which Asel explains that it is her stat sheet. Dish doesn't know what a stat sheet is, so she explains that every adventurer is regularly assessed by the guild. She got the sheet from her admin. Asel asks Dish to look at what is written in the table. He reads the data and notes that Asel weighs quite a lot. This terribly embarrasses her, and she angrily says that he is looking in the wrong place. Dish says that she comes to him quite often, so it is not surprising that she has gained weight. Asel demands that he read the line below. Dish looks at the line below, notices the number 999, which represents Asel's agility level. He is surprised by this, but Asel thinks it's really cool and is clearly happy. Dish says that he heard that the parameter limit is 999. Then he asks Asel if it is possible that this estimate is just a glitch. She replies that she has proven her skill level in practice. She tells how she recently encountered a pack of maned wolves. Dish notes that maned wolves are quite a nasty opponent because they have very high speed. Therefore, if you do not kill the leader quickly, it will be difficult to defeat them. Even Juan has a hard time dealing with them sometimes. Asel agrees with him, but says that this time everything was different. She tells Dish about her recent mission with Elizabeth and Marf, where she was able to kill a maned wolf in a matter of seconds and even kept up with them in speed. Disha is interested in this, as these wolves are not so easy to defeat. Asel agrees with him, but she is also interested in what happened to her. She didn't level up the skill, so the numbers shouldn't have changed. She also says that she's done the loyalty check several times in a row, but the numbers haven't changed. Dish looks interested, but clearly unsurprised. Also asks him if he knows the reason why this could have happened. Dish nonchalantly replies that he does. However, before telling her, he invites her to come to his place. Aussie is clearly not ready to enter his house. She thinks that she has visited Dish many times but never entered the house, and this is the moment when a guy invites a girl to his place. She understands that she is a lady, and she cannot accept such an offer. After that, Dish says with a friendly smile that he, as usual, prepared delicious miso soup, which Asel will definitely like. Just a few minutes later, Asel is sitting on a wooden chair in Disha's house. She is angry with herself for giving in to temptation, and reminds herself to remain vigilant. She looks around while Dish is busy with something in the kitchen. There are many shelves around, filled with pots and cups of ingredients. Asel notes that his entire home is filled with delicious food. He asks if she eats anything there, seeing how she looks at the products. Asel asks in fear if the contents of all the pots are inedible. To this, Dish replies that everything is edible, but she should not eat anything because her portion of soup is already ready. Afterwards, Dish places her portion of soup on the wooden table in front of her. It is his new specialty, miso soup with meat and vegetables. Asel looks at the contents with gusto, seeing that the meat and vegetables are cut into perfectly sized pieces. The taste is very fresh and rich, and the colors and smells intertwine together as if filling her entire body from the inside. She lifts the cup to her mouth and takes a sip of the broth, after which she immediately breaks into a satisfied and contented smile. She feels her whole body overflowing with joy, and she feels that incredible sensation again. Dish notes that the meat is tougher today, but that's a good thing, because if you chew it well, its unique flavor is revealed. Asel feels that as soon as she bites into a piece, the threads of flavors intertwine and reinforce each other. Finally, she tastes the potato, which is perfectly intertwined with the other root vegetables, all complemented by the salty taste of the miso, which sets off the sweetness. Asel feels the most genuine happiness, and even imagines that potatoes, other vegetables, meat and miso joined hands and began to dance a waltz in her mouth. She feels the perfect combination of four tastes. Asel continues to enjoy the delicious soup, while Dish is busy with something. She notices this and asks the cook what he is doing. He turns to her and replies that he can answer her question about why her stats suddenly increased. After this, he places a jug of beans in front of Asel and says that they are called Speedy. At first, Asel doesn't react, but seconds later, she turns to Dish and asks again, not believing what he just said. Dish doesn't look surprised and asks if she's heard about them. Then Asel explains that speed beans, or speed beans, are magic beans that can increase agility simply by eating them. These beans are an extremely rare plant that only grows in small patches of special soil and has not yet been cultivated by anyone. Dish, after listening to everything, as if nothing had happened, says that he simply boiled them and ground them up to make miso. Asel then, in complete shock, asks him where he was able to find so many speed beans. Dish decides to show her the place where he found them and takes her to a field in the backyard of his own house, while Asel looks in disbelief at an entire garden filled with rows of rare beans. Asel can't say a word. She's still looking at the entire garden of speed beans in complete shock, still not believing the sight before her eyes. She, shaking and covered in cold sweat, asks Dish if these are really all speed beans to be sure. Dish agrees and wants to tell her something, but Asel interrupts him with her surprised cry. She looks at the field and realizes that there are 1,000, if not 5,000, beans there. She remembers that these beans are so rare that they are incredibly expensive. That's why there are entire underground auctions where you can easily exchange 1 or even 2 magic swords for 1 bean. Asel understands that if she sells everything that grows here, she can easily buy an aristocrat's mansion. However, looking at the situation from another angle, she understands that with so many beans, everyone could become as fast as she is, and that would be a real revolution. She understands that then they would be able to exterminate most of the monsters and protect many lives. Coming out of her reverie, she aggressively asks Dish how this even happened and why the beans grew so well in his backyard. She claims that even with skill, this cannot be achieved. She asks him how he was able to grow them. He replies that the usual methods are really powerless here. He bends down and picks up a piece of soil, saying that something has been mixed into the soil, namely the bones of monsters, which he himself mixed with the earth. Asel asks again in surprise, and then Dish explains that they contain the remains of mana. He says that once in the mountains he saw beans growing around the skeleton of a monster, and that was when he came up with this method. Asel replies that it's simply amazing, and she absolutely must tell everyone about this method. Dish replies that he's a bit too lazy to do it, but if she thinks so, then he probably won't mind. Asel makes a decision to herself and realizes that now people will be able to grow thousands of speed beans, and then many adventurers will be able to raise their characteristics. She also realizes that there will be a lot of delicious miso on the market then, when suddenly these thoughts bring her to a realization. In her head, she makes a logical chain. She understands that then she will be able to eat miso without leaving home. Like a regular product, she will no longer have to come to the forest, and the reason for visiting Disha will disappear, and she will not see him anymore. She is determined that she cannot allow this to happen, but her reaction seems strange to Dish because he does not understand what she is thinking. He asks what she cannot allow, but she interrupts him, saying that although it is a great loss to the world, they will not be able to reveal the secret of growing beans. Asel, in turn, decides that she cannot allow this to happen. She feels that during all the days she visited him, he also ate miso. Therefore, his characteristics should have increased significantly. Dish says that his characteristics have not changed at all. Asel asks the reason. Dish says he uses another type of bean for miso, too. He points to another bean growing nearby, calling it a slow bean. Asel understands his explanation, as she is suddenly very surprised by the slowdown beans, which, in contrast to the speed beans, reduce speed. She remembers hearing a joke about a merchant who thought he had bought speed beans, but the opposite happened, and he went bankrupt. Dish interrupts her thoughts by offering her a taste of slow beans. After some time, Asel and Dish are back in the house, and Dish serves her a new soup with slow beans. She looks at the delicious soup, the broth of which is already red. She smells an incredible aroma, and realizes that it is much stronger than the speed bean miso. Even though she just ate, she still can't resist the smell. However, she immediately comes to her senses, telling herself not to deceive herself and reminding herself that this miso is made from miso beans, which can clearly affect her condition. One of her signature skills is her incredible speed, so she can't be affected by any soup. However, she does not resist for long and soon eats the soup with pleasure. She feels that compared to those white beans, the taste is deeper and the sensation is softer. And although the other ingredients are the same, the taste is completely different. She continues to eat the soup with pleasure, saying that she likes this miso even more than the previous one, and she again feels the pleasant taste spreading throughout her body. Dish asks if Asel likes the soup he made, to which she says that the soup is very tasty. However, she also understands to herself that since miso is made from slow beans, her stats are currently decreasing. She continues to drink the broth with gusto, while realizing that her entire light speed is most likely turning into normal speed right now. It seems to her that over time she will become slow Asel, then turtle Asel, then turtle Asel. She realizes that with every sip of soup she is turning into a trinket that even the turtle can outrun. She tries to get rid of these obsessive, stupid thoughts. She looks at the table with her stats and remembers what she had already decided for herself earlier. She had decided that she wanted to come to Dish again and again, and therefore the method of growing speed beans should be kept a secret. Although Asel understands that this can help others, she decided to hide everything for her own benefit. And this means that as atonement, she needs to fight for 10 people herself. She understands that she can never lose to herself. However, moments later she happily asks for more soup, and Dish takes hold of the giant pot, saying that there is still plenty of soup, and she can eat as much as she wants. Despite everything, that day Asel light speed lost. Some time later, Asel was fighting monsters on a mission with Elizabeth and Pharma. Elizabeth asks her partner if she has noticed that Asel is slower than usual today. Pharma agrees, saying that she can see Asel putting all her strength into the fight, even though these monsters are no match for her. They wonder what that could mean. Pharm decides that in this case, they too must put in their full effort to become stronger. Asel doesn't say anything to this, because she understands to herself that Pharm is completely wrong. And Asel simply ate too many slow beans, and as a result her speed became even lower than it was originally. After this task, Asel returned to the city. She came to a girl named Fawn, an administrator who was checking her characteristics. Fawn says that Asel's status has changed again. Before, her speed had increased to 999, but now it has dropped again, and her weight has increased. Asel is not sure if this is good or bad. Carbania is one of the most influential states of Runlud. It was founded in 420, and is the fourth largest city in the world in terms of area, located in the northwest of the mainland of Kementos. Of course, the state has everything: mountains, forests, fields, and also access to the sea. Therefore, it is actively developing to this day, taking advantage of its favorable location. The continent has all 4 seasons. They say the Carbania is the most beautiful country in the world. It is here, in the border town of Urbane, that Asel von Vielen lives. She and her partners, Elizabeth and Pharma, arrive at the Adventurers Guild. Once inside, Asel approaches Fawn and hands her the quest materials. A cute girl in a work uniform and with fluffy ears on her head examines the materials. After that, she praises Asel for her work, since she completed a task in a day that ordinary adventurers complete in 5 days. Von Land is the admin of the guild that Asel, Elizabeth, and Farmer are assigned to. The guild accepts either requests to destroy monsters or personal requests from citizens. All tasks are divided into ranks and distributed among adventurers accordingly. Initially, a guild was simply a place where people could find someone with a suitable skill. However, due to the large number of requests for monster extermination, guilds began to hire so-called adventurers. As a result, orders from all over the country began to be collected in one place, and after some time, it all turned into a well-established system. And now the reward is paid by the guild itself, and not by the customer. Along with this, a system was created whereby, in order to successfully complete a task, parts of the monsters had to be provided as evidence, and those who have joined the guild can accept these orders. Those who are called adventurers. They are heroes who destroy monsters and conquer previously unknown dungeons. At least that's what they say. The adventurers present in the guild turned their attention to the appearance of Asel, the Holy Knight. They looked with delight at the claws she brought back from the completed mission. They are surprised because the huge pile of claws belongs to the maned wolves, which are difficult to collect even in small quantities. However, they did not expect anything less from an SS rank adventurer. Adventurers with F rank can only dream of missions to destroy monsters. The girl next to them agrees, sadly saying that they have to carry out all sorts of assignments, either to catch escaped pets or to collect herbs. However, one of the adventurers interrupts their whining, enthusiastically saying that someday they will become as strong and cool as SS-ranked adventurers. Acel, listening to the young adventurers, understands that it is impossible to carry out only heroic tasks, and that ordinary assignments are also very important. She believes that these three are no less remarkable adventurers who have completed many useful tasks, and they are, in a sense, even great heroes. Acel is an adventurer of the highest SS rank, and the title of Holy Knight is given to her by the state. This gives her a number of privileges, as her rank is only achieved by outstanding individuals, so it is very rare. One of the privileges that Acel has as an SS rank adventurer is having such a wonderful group administrator as Fawn. She always provides all the detailed information on each task. She's a truly talented girl who supports Acel and her group with all her might. However, she's also always ready to help other adventurers. Fram's unusual behavior. She notes that Fram had been very quiet until recently, but has recently become more cheerful. Fram explains that she was simply shocked at first by the gap between her and Acel's skills. However, Fram has noticed how Acel has been pushing herself to the limit lately, even on simple missions. Fram continues, saying that she likes the freedom she has in battle, and that she likes the new silent Acel. She, in turn, remains silent, turning away. Acel wants to clear everything up right now, telling everyone that it's all because of the slow beans and because she just couldn't resist the temptation. However, she can say that, so she keeps silent. Fawn approaches Acel and whispers to make sure that her agility has not recently returned to its normal level. Acel agrees, but asks not to tell Fram about it. Fawn agrees that it is better to leave everything as it is, looking at the joyful and enthusiastic Fram. Acel explains to Fawn that a lot has simply happened to her, but she has nothing to regret. She also does not think that there is any error in her characteristics. Fawn asks what happened, because Acel's agility is not the only thing that has changed. Acel just looks away in embarrassment and mumbles something in response. Then Fawn comes closer to look her in the eyes and asks if Acel has a boyfriend. She is shocked and silent for a few seconds, then blushes terribly and squeals in embarrassment. Looking at her reaction, Fawn assumes that she was right on target with her guess, smirking contentedly. Acel desperately tries to convince Fawn that this is not true and that she does not have a boyfriend. But Fawn clearly does not believe her, calling her reaction suspicious. Overhearing their conversation, Fram adds that Acel has indeed been going to the mountains a lot lately, while Acel fearfully asks how she even knows this. Acel tries to change the subject, saying that there have been a lot of accidents lately. However, Fram immediately corrects her, saying that she means the usual mountains where people usually go to kill monsters. Suddenly, after these words, she comes to a realization. She remembers that it was in the mountains that they recently tried monster meat. After this, Acel immediately forcibly covers her mouth with his hand, not allowing her to say another word. Fam only says with a smile that Acel has absolutely nothing to be embarrassed about, because she is a good girl and there is nothing wrong with the fact that she is a lover. Acel is still trying to refute Fam's words, saying that none of the above is in any way connected with the change in her characteristics. However, immediately after this, she becomes confused in her words, saying that these events may be partly connected, but in any case, it should not worry them. Fam, with the same smile, says that she understood everything. And after that, Acel turns her attention to Fram, asking if she is alive at all, since all this time Acel was holding her tightly by the neck and head. Acel finally looks at her friend, who apparently lost consciousness from such pressure. Acel immediately desperately asks Fram for forgiveness, trying to bring her friend to consciousness. Acel leaves the Adventurers Guild after everything that happened. She is clearly unhappy that her friends did not make up rumors about her, because she and Dish do not have such a relationship yet. However, she immediately becomes furious, not understanding why she thought that they were not in that kind of relationship yet. She starts banging her head against the wall, angry at herself. However, despite all this, she realizes that the truth has been coming to Dish a lot lately. She decides that she needs to stop neglecting her duty as an adventurer. Acel realizes that the guild includes Fram and the other newcomers, and she must set a good example for them. She decides that it would be better for her to give up going to Dish for a while. After these thoughts, Acel firmly decides that she will not come to Dish for some time, because she is a holy knight and must not deviate from the chosen path under any circumstances. She is sure that she can handle it. However, her confidence quickly breaks down, and the next day she again comes to Dish, who serves her freshly prepared wild raven kebabs. Acel looks at the hot, fresh meat with delight. She is simply beside herself with happiness, and Dish in turn reminds that Acel said that she wants to eat them again. Acel is glad that Dish remembered her words and thanks him for the food. She bites off a piece of meat and immediately feels the familiar, incredible, unique taste. She says these kebabs are not at all like those sold in the city because the crow meat feels more elastic. Acel continues to eat the delicious shashlik, saying that the elasticity of the raven meat clearly does not make it tough. It is pleasantly elastic. The meat is perfectly chewed and the entire mouth is filled with meat juices. Acel would never have thought that such harmful birds as wild crows could be so tasty. Acel quickly eats her entire portion, leaving only an empty plate with skewers. She is full and happy that she was finally able to enjoy the long-awaited raven. However, after a few seconds, she realizes. She starts screaming and getting angry at herself because she promised herself that she would not come to Dish anymore. At this point, she notices that Dish is busy packing his things into a rather large backpack. Having collected everything, he puts the backpack on his back. Acel asks if Dish is going somewhere, and he confirms. He invites Acel to look out the window. Acel understands that this could lead to problems, because even if only a distant mountain is burning now, the fire could easily spread through the forest and reach this place. Acel understands that if this happens, she will no longer be able to eat delicious food. However, she immediately changes her train of thought, thinking that their home is also dangerous. Therefore, she cannot hesitate for a minute. She turns to Dish, who in turn looks completely calm and carefree, unlike her. She asks worriedly why he is completely calm. He tells Acel not to worry because the fire most likely comes from fire-eating birds. Acel, in turn, has never heard of these monsters. The Fire Eater is a cankrank monster that possesses the element of fire. As the name suggests, these birds are capable of consuming flames. They usually live in volcanoes and do not often attack humans. Dish explains that when there is no flame around, these birds create their own, after which they eat burning coals and stones to satisfy their hunger. Acel hears about such monsters for the first time in her life. She realizes that even if the fire was caused by a monster, she still can't ignore it. Because from what Dish said, the fire should spread even faster. She tells him that if nothing is done, these monsters will harm people, which means she can't stay away. Acel draws her sword from its sheath and declares that she is going to destroy the Fire Eater. Dish asks if she is sure. She replies that she is sure because it is to save people. At this moment, Juan approaches Acel, and she is happy because this most likely means that he wants to go with her, which means that together they can definitely cope. However, when she looks at Juan, she notices that he clearly looks excited and happy. She asks the wolf why he is drooling. Then Dish tells Acel that, in fact, fire eaters are incredibly tasty. Acel is shocked, and at the same second her stomach rumbles loudly from the mere thought of a new tasty dish. Dish laughs at this, saying that he expected such a reaction, and he even calls Acel funny. Acel clearly does not share his amusement and sheepishly tries to convince him that he did not hear anything and just showed him. Dish stops laughing and asks Acel not to worry so much. Besides, he himself has wanted to eat fire eaters for a long time. He says that by destroying the monster, they will be able to protect people, as Acel wanted, and at the same time, they will be able to enjoy delicious meat. Acel agrees to this arrangement. After this, Dish, Juan, and Acel are determined to hunt. The whole group goes out into the forest to hunt for the Fire Eater. Only now Acel asks Dish if he has a plan, to which he replies that he has a plan. Dish picks up a twig and uses it as a pointer. He suggests that they first consider a method for catching a Fire Eater. Dish says that the most important thing in hunting is to know the monster's habits. Fire eaters like to eat smoldering fire, so the first thing they need to do is start a fire. If you start a fire, the smell of smoke will spread around the area. This will attract the bird, because for them it smells like food. They also plan to add concentrated alcohol to the fire, as this will intensify the smoke and create thick alcoholic vapors. The smell should immediately make the fire eater drunk, after which the capture will be successfully completed. This also notes that they need to be careful not to get drunk themselves. Acel asks if monsters can even get drunk because she has never heard of such a thing. Dish explains that some monsters do have resistance to poison or petrification, but they are still living creatures and therefore alcohol will affect them. Dish says it will work either way, And even Juan was drunk recently, which surprises Aselful. She still finds it hard to believe that this plan will actually work, but Dis seems completely calm, so they follow the plan and make a fire. Suddenly they hear a loud cry that echoes throughout the forest. Juan lifts his muzzle and Asel, also looking up, sees a figure rapidly approaching them in the sky. She turned out to be a fire eater. Dish shouts to Asel that they need to hide quickly because the monster must not be noticed. All three manage to hide in the bushes. The bird swoops down and sniffs the smoke coming from the fire. Asel sees that the fire eater is being careful and is clearly in no hurry to go down to the fire. Dish tells her that she is in too much of a hurry, and patience is very important for a good hunter. The fire eater finally stands on the ground. He still approaches the fire with caution and looks at it carefully. Asel decides that it is time to attack from an ambush, but Dish stops her. He says it is not time yet. Asel does not understand why he is delaying, because the bird is already quite close. Dish asks her to watch carefully, because the alcohol will soon begin to take effect. Asel continues to watch the bird. She notes that the smell of alcohol actually reaches even them. Suddenly, she notices that the fire eater has finally lowered its beak directly into the flames. He runs his beak over the fire for a while, and at one point freezes, which Asel notices. The fire eater stands motionless for a few more seconds, then lifts its beak and hiccups loudly. Asel watches in shock, asking Dish, still not believing that the fire eater just hiccuped. The bird first shakes its head in confusion, then spreads its wings. Asel is worried, thinking that the fire eater is going to fly away. But Dish tells her not to worry because the monster is already quite drunk. To Asel, it looks like a normal chicken walk. At this point, Dish says that now is the perfect time to attack. The next moment, Dish jerked to the side. Asel was sitting in pain but screamed Dish's name. Dish looked to the side and grabbed a bottle of liquid. He threw it towards the bird, which was walking nervously. The bottle broke and landed right on the bird. Asel was surprised that at first it was a strong drink, and now it was water. Dish thinks that for a fire monster, water is like poison, and for a drunken eater, it's like snow on the head. He thinks it really worked, but he doesn't understand what the secret is. Suddenly Asel called him and asked him to stop. She said that no matter how much water you pour on him, it won't kill him. Then she was surprised. Asel thought that the bird's reaction had become very dull. She understood and said that if these monsters eat fire, then their own body temperature is very high. She had heard that if you lower your body temperature, your senses become dull and it becomes harder to move. She didn't think Dish had thought it through so precisely. At that moment, Dish attacked the bird. Asel said about excellent work. She looked at Dish and thought that he was very familiar with the smallest features of monsters. Asel saw smoke and heard screams. Many birds appeared. Asel didn't understand why so many of them had flocked together. Dish said that these birds also smelled the delicious aroma of smoke. The smoke had already spread quite far. Asel said that Dish was too calm, because it would be difficult to cope with such a number. Dish replied that he had only set a trap and was hunting, otherwise they would not have been able to catch the bird. Dish called Asel and asked if that wasn't why she came here. Asel said that Dish was absolutely right. Juan will help them too. Asel thought that this might be her hardest battle, but surprisingly she was confident of victory. The girl then took out her sword and told the birds to attack if they were eager to be chopped up for meat. The girl rushed to attack. Sometime later, Asel was breathing heavily. She rejoiced in her own power, and then rejoiced in her and Juan's combined power. Dish was surprised, because he thought that the girl was only going to drive away the birds, but she chopped them all up. Asel asked Dish if everything was okay with the ingredients. Dish said that everything was intact, which means that everything is fine. If everything was damaged, the meat could be thrown away. Asel said she felt a little awkward and then asked why other meat would be unusable. Dish said that if you damage the insides, everything else will come out and you can throw it away right away. He said that this battle was long, but Asel and Juan were great. Usually in a long fight, concentration is lost and then the attacks become sloppier. Asel replied that otherwise she would not be a holy knight. Then the girl said that she wanted to eat faster. Dish agreed, but said that he would not be able to cook all the birds. Monster meat spoils very quickly, so he would only have time to cut up some. Asel was surprised. Dish told her not to worry because there was enough meat for the girl to definitely eat her fill. After some time, Dish started cooking. Asel was surprised that he was cooking it right away. Dish said that fire eaters have a high body temperature to begin with, and they are very hot. So if you start cutting it right away, you can get burned. So you need to cool the meat first. If you cool the meat too quickly, it will shrink and become tough. In this case, it will not be possible to return the meat to its previous texture. When the meat reaches approximately human body temperature, you can take the bird out of the water and pluck its feathers. Asel was surprised. The bird was red, as if it was made of fire itself. Then Dish started cooking. Dish suggested that the guys try it. Asel asked about spices, but Dish said that the meat itself was very tasty. The girl began to taste the meat. The next moment, she screamed with delight. Asel said that the meat is very spicy. The texture of the meat itself is good. It is elastic and unusually soft, but very spicy. As soon as you bite into it, your mouth is filled with meat juice. She also felt not only the spiciness of the meat, but also its sweetness. Dish smiled and said that if they waited a little, he would make something tastier. Juan and Asel sat and waited. Dish began cooking and using potato flour as a breading. Then he threw it into the frying pan, and the boys heard a divine sound and a delicious smell. The appearance of the dish was also attractive. Dish cooked chicken in batter. They accepted to eat the fire eater. The guys were surprised by the unusual texture. The meat was so crispy on the outside and soft on the inside. The potato breading was very crispy. The light, crispy texture gives way to the dense texture of the meat. They ate it all. Asel didn't expect fire eaters to be so tasty. Then Dish realized that Asel didn't know the most basics. Monster's blood contains mana. Since the fire eater has the fire element, the meat is spicy. Asel was not aware of such differences. Perhaps this is unknown even to the sages of the Royal Library. But for Dish, this information seems ordinary. Dish Machan is a very mysterious young man. Sometime later, in the Adventurers Guild, Asel decided to put on a helmet. Asel turns around and her lips are swollen from the sharp meat, so she decides to put on a helmet to hide the disfigurement. The girl who belonged to the beast race was named Carol Harness, and recently she noticed something curious, which, among other things, concerned her mistress, the knight Asel. She and Carol met one day about 3 years ago when her parents died in an accident at the hands of a monster. At that very moment, Asel appeared in front of the little girl and bravely saved her from danger. Thus, the girl owed her life to her, and on top of everything else, she was left completely alone when kind Asel gave her a place in which she could live for a long time and to which she could always return. After that, the girl began to live in her mansion as a maid, setting herself the task of supporting her mistress with delicious food, because she, as an adventurer, was very busy. It was thanks to all this that Carol was able to notice how her mistress had, from a certain point on, begun to sigh while eating. And not only that, she sighed while looking into the distance, and even when taking a medicinal bath. At first, Harness thought that it was the food she had prepared. But after thinking about the whole situation for a while, she discarded that option, deciding that something completely different was more likely, namely, love. Because in the girl's opinion, Asel definitely fell in love with someone, because she even began to often go towards Mount Kumaf, although she probably did not have the courage to take the next step. So, Carol, with an inspired look and sparkles in her eyes, decided that all she could do as her mistress's maid was to push the relationship of the couple who were dating forward. Sometime later, in the mountains, the maid, with her stomach growling from hunger, recalling her recent desires, realized that she had come to the mountains without the slightest knowledge of where the young man lived, to whom Asel constantly visited. Besides, Carol thought about why the guy had to live in the forest at all. Because there were other cities. And also, walking along the path, she thought about the fact that she would not be able to fight off a probable attack of a monster, especially in a hungry state. But not wanting to give up so quickly and easily, Harness confidently decided that she definitely wanted to see her mistress's lover and firmly declared that she would definitely find him. But a moment later, the maid was already lying on the ground while her stomach was making extremely loud sounds demanding food. The girl herself could not move until she remembered that she still had to find time to go back and cook dinner. At that moment, Harness was about to give up and mentally asked her mistress for forgiveness, believing that she would no longer be able to help her. The silhouette of an animal was approaching her, which seemed like a monster to the girl, after which she passed out. Carol woke up only after some time, on an improvised bed, and began to remember how she got lost in the forest, and later lost consciousness and no longer knew where she was. After that, Carol saw the recent monster standing in front of her, looking straight at her, making the girl wonder why she was even alive until now. As the beast approached the girl's face, she realized that in this situation she couldn't even run away, because it was still as difficult to move as before, but the creature only licked Carol, slightly stunning her. Immediately after this, the protagonist Dishmalkan noticed that she had woken up and asked his guest to wait a little, because he was going to cook food. Carol noticed that he was about the same age as herself, and assumed that it was the young man who saved her. The girl immediately decided to refuse his offer as politely as possible, since she had already been saved by him from danger and the risk of death, and she thought that she could not eat from him in such a situation. But the next second, her stomach suddenly made an even louder and louder rumbling sound than before from prolonged hunger, while she continued to refuse the food offered to her. Dis convinced her that he had been purring quite loudly the entire time she was unconscious, and asked her not to be stubborn in her decision, since he and his pet had not yet eaten. After this, the embarrassed girl decided to agree to the offered hospitality, after which she noticed how the hero was preparing their future food on the fire. She realized that the guy was holding some black sticks over the fire and preparing them, and she assumed that, at least from the outside, they looked very much like bamboo. Then the girl also decided to introduce herself, and the hero, in response to this, introduced himself and his partner, and at the same time his pet wolf, Juan. Having learned the name of her savior, the girl happily thanked him for everything and offered her help, but Dish already had everything ready, and he asked her not to worry about it. At this time, juice began to ooze from the ends of those same black sticks, which is why the young man decided that it was just the right time to remove them from the fire. When the guy opened them, steam started coming out of the sticks, and the dish itself literally sparkled, while Carol was absolutely amazed at what she saw in front of her at that moment. After Carol tasted the food quickly cooked by Dish over the fire, she noted its unusualness, because she had never seen anything like it. The first thing that came to her mind was a fairly close resemblance to boiled barley and rice. But she also noticed that she had never seen barley so white. Moreover, the grains would then be much more rounded, and not oblong as they were at that moment, which only meant that the dish was clearly uncooked barley with rice, but something else. Intrigued by this rather unusual food, Harness finally asked the hero to try at least a small part of his dinner, and he had nothing against it. Armed with 2 chopsticks, the girl slowly and reverently tried the food that had been prepared just recently. Afterwards, she was quite surprised at how delicious it was, noting that the sweetness was revealed more and more with each movement, and the texture was elastic and pleasant. Delighted by the bright compliments on his cooking, Dish said that the dish, on top of everything else, was not even finished yet, and asked his guest to wait a little until the cooking was fully completed. At that moment, she was perplexed, because even at the stage she was at that time, the dish was quite tasty, and she did not understand how it was possible to improve the dish even more. But the young man did not inspire confidence in Carol, which is why she inquired about the white grains that made up the dish, clarifying that it did not resemble barley due to its whiter and more oval appearance. To this, Dish replied with an imperturbable face that these were madderage seeds. But upon hearing this, Carol was suddenly horrified and spat out what was in her mouth at that moment. In fact, madderage was a poisonous plant, which, if consumed in large quantities, could cause poisoning or even death, which was widely known, and no one in their right mind ate it. Knowing all this, the girl, with tears in her eyes, was indignant that Dish fed the seeds of this poisonous grass to her. But he only asked Carol not to worry, adding that the poison was contained mainly in the roots and stem, and he gave her only the seeds. But Harness did not finish expressing her indignation, since she could not have known about this, since she was not a farmer's daughter, and she knew that if the plant was poisonous, then its fruit and even the seeds must contain poison. But in response to this, the hero calmly and patiently explained to her that a very small amount of poison in the food could indeed be there, but it would also be extremely small for any poisoning from it. Despite this, the girl was still unhappy, but the young man interrupted her and said that, to be sure, he washed the grains with holy water, and thus the poison was completely removed and eliminated from each grain of seed. But even though she had calmed down her complaints about the poison, this time the maid was extremely stunned that a man would so easily use holy water to simply wash food. holy water could actually be used to wash food so that it would later be safe to eat, and the method itself was used to clean meat and vegetables. But Carol doubted the effectiveness of such a method on the seeds of this poisonous herb itself, as well as where the guy even learned such a method of cooking in order to use it in the future. She asked the young man about it, noting that it was the first time she had heard of anyone making Madaraj, but Dish admitted that no one had taught him this, and he had thought of it himself. Not recognizing what she had heard, the maid next asked where the hero had gotten the holy water from, because she did not understand where he could have found it in the depths of the forest and the mountains. But the young man had a whole jug of this water, which surprised Harness even more. The guy also added that spirits sometimes dropped in for lunch and, in gratitude, brought him this same holy water, but even this surprised Carol. She could not believe that spirits actually came to dine with him, since she herself had never seen them, and therefore did not believe that such exalted beings would come to him. Next, Dish pointed to his pet, noting that Juan was a divine beast, which left the maid extremely stunned when she heard this, since she knew what beasts of that level were like. After that, she decided to summarize everything that had been said before, including that the guy was the master of a divine beast and that spirits shared his dinner. But this did not bring clarity to Carol's head, and she assumed that she was affected by the poison. But, having cast aside all other thoughts, Harness came to the conclusion that she didn't have to worry about the poison, because if the food was poisonous, she would have had a stomachache long ago. But instead she noticed that there was a very pleasant feeling in her stomach, as if the stomach itself was actually very happy, and her whole body at that moment became much lighter. A moment later, Dish announced the end of cooking, taking a dish from under the fire that was so steaming and smelling that even Carol, despite knowing that the food was made from a poisonous plant, could not resist the wonderful smell. Having given in to her resistance, Harness realized that she could no longer behave like this, and apologizing for everything she had said earlier about the poison, asked for a piece of the dish to be given to her as well. The main character was all for it, especially since the cooking was finished. So this time he prepared a special dish of Disha Makona, Piku Mataraj, with miso. In response to the girl's surprise about the name, the young man explained that he came up with the name himself, and noted that the dish resembled the tip of a spear, which justified its name, which was confirmed by his pet and guest. Immediately after this, the girl began to eat, wanting to finally try the food that had been prepared moments ago, and after blowing a little to cool the surface of the food recently pulled out from under the fire. She then took a bite from the stick. Carol joyfully and enthusiastically shouted about how delicious what she was tasting at that moment was, and her cry spread far out into the mountains. Harness also noted that the Madaraj grass was fried and became quite crispy, and all the moisture was successfully evaporated, making the texture of the dish even more refined. However, despite everything else, inside it remained just as elastic as before, and the sweetness of the food itself after it was fried became even more pronounced than ever. In addition, according to the girl, the paste, which was called miso, was able to successfully impart to the dish that delicious flavor that she could observe and taste. This went perfectly with the main flavor without even overpowering the original sweetness, and the bitterness from the fried crust further emphasized the taste. Thus, the truly extraordinary sweetness of that very poisonous Madaraj herb and the rather deep, moderately salty taste of miso successfully did their job. This convinced Harness that there could hardly have been a better combination of these ingredients, which she admitted outright, loudly declaring that the dish was incredibly delicious. A little later, when the plates were empty, the maid, after thinking for a bit, enthusiastically asked how the hero had even come up with this method of cooking, and inquired about his skill. But Dish said that he had no skill at all this time, somewhat stunning the girl, after which he even further clarified that in fact he was only a level 0 cook. When Carol wanted to suggest something about the guy, a loud cry was heard from the depths of the forest. Estelle was desperately calling her subordinate by name, to which she could not help but respond, because she immediately recognized her mistress. In turn, the adventurer who arrived at that moment jumped high above the forest and rushed towards Carol, and in a heavy fall knocked Harness to the ground, which caused her a little pain. But Estelle, with tears in her eyes, was glad that finally, after a long search everywhere, she found her maid, for which she sincerely apologized, assuring her that she was okay. Carol also added that she was saved by a young man and pointed in his direction, in response to which Assel turned around, starting to thank the guy. But upon seeing him, she immediately recognized him as Daisha, who briskly greeted her in return. Harness was surprised that the couple were obviously familiar, and thought about it, after which she finally realized that the reason why her mistress had been eating poorly lately, and had been going to the mountains so often, was precisely Dish. At that moment, she wanted to ask her mistress about why she had come to these mountains in the first place, about her new lover, but she was abruptly interrupted by her mistress, and did not have time to finish anything she wanted to discuss. Asel saw how the hero was eating something tasty again, and despite the fact that it was someone else's portion, she declared that the young man had probably prepared a lot, so she was sure that nothing would happen if she took at least one. Afterwards, she broke into a smile from the guy's delicious cooking. Noticing this reaction of her mistress, Carol immediately thought about it and realized that Asel had never reacted so sharply and vividly to the food she had prepared. Thus, Harness turned to Dish and threateningly declared war on him, deciding that from that day on they would be rivals, while the others, including the hero himself, stared at her with misunderstanding. Carol continued, noting that she would win at all costs and win back her mistress's recognition, while Asel and Dish wondered if something had happened between the girl and her maid. Having announced such an event, Carol gathered her strength and decided that before the competition it was necessary to immediately begin training and rush forward from the forest on the way to her goal. Watching her, Asel was surprised by her extremely abrupt actions and, realizing the direction of her movement, immediately asked her to return, realizing that there was a steep cliff on the girl's path. Some time after the latest events, a cry was heard in Asel's house that Disha was going to be invited to their house, which the hostess of the house herself was extremely surprised by. But Carol was confident in her intentions, adding that he had recently helped them a lot, and it was simply necessary to thank him. But besides everything else, Harness wanted to get the opportunity to find out who was worthy of cooking for Mrs. Asel herself, so she wanted to put everything in its place. Some time later, in one of the rooms, there were several plates with exquisite-looking and literally sparkling dishes on the table. The protagonist was stunned by this sight when Carol invited him to the table, and with a slight grin, asked him to help himself. After the young man took and bit into his piece of food, the maid asked him how tasty he thought the dish she had prepared was. But Dish was literally delighted with the insanely delicious food, and Carol, in response, only boasted that she made it with her own hands. After this, Dish paid special attention to the corn soup, which seemed very interesting to him, and he noted that it was the first time he tried chilled soup. Hearing this, the maid, pleased with her work, explained that to prepare this soup, she first stews the corn with the kernels, because the sweetness inherent in the corn is also present in the cob itself, which ultimately saturates the taste. Having learned about this method of making soup, Dish was surprised and decided to definitely try to do it himself one day, and then noted that the duck meat also turned out excellent and extremely soft. The guy also couldn't help but mention the perfect degree of doneness, and asked about the sauce, which in his opinion perfectly complemented the dish with its bitter taste, and he knew from one of the servants of Asel's house that a little beer was added to the sauce. Hearing this, the hero was surprised and immediately decided to try the sauce again in order to confirm his conclusions, after which he took a small amount of the sauce with his finger. After this, the young man immediately felt how the sweetness and bitterness inherent in beer spread throughout his mouth. But he also noted that it was not only the beer, and was sure that something else must have played a different role. But the resourceful Level 0 chef, having some knowledge behind him, immediately guessed that the recipe for the dish included onions, bone meal, and garlic. He knew that if all of these were stewed together, the saltiness of the bone meal he had discovered, after some successful manipulation, would be in perfect balance with the sweetness of the onions and garlic. Thus, Dish perceived a moderate sweetness and a slight bitterness that did not overpower the taste of the meat. And he doubted that there was a more successful combination of such a combination that would be able to highlight the taste of duck meat. The avid cook, immediately after eating the dish, expressed his desire to cook something like this as soon as possible, and noted that Carol's dish turned out very tasty, and also did not skimp on the sauce, which turned out simply amazing. While one of the servants politely thanked him for the praise expressed towards him, Asel was glad that Dish was pleased, because in that case the whole event was worth it. The guy who noticed her looked at her a little thoughtfully, and then noticed that she was completely unrecognizable, and added that at that moment, she looked just like a real aristocrat. Hearing this, the girl became embarrassed, But Carol noted with displeasure that the hero could have found better words for a compliment. Dish himself, to the indignant discontent of the maid behind his back, noted that, in his opinion, clothes made a person look good, and he was sure that this was precisely a compliment. But Estelle asked her maid to calm down because the young man had tried to praise her wholeheartedly. In response, the guy confirmed her words and added that the way she looked suited her very well. Hearing this compliment, the girl became embarrassed, and Dish wondered why the girl's face turned red. At this moment, Wu, with a joyful intonation, also decided to say something of his own, drawing everyone else's attention to himself. But Carol noticed that his plate, which displayed the dish she had prepared, had not even had anything bitten off, and was left standing as is. The maid didn't understand why exactly the beast didn't like her dish, but Dish immediately apologized for it. He also clarified that this was not the case, because he ate food prepared only by the person he accepted with all his heart. But in this way, the girl only realized that the divine beast did not trust her. Right after that, the hero and his pet had a short conversation, and Dish decided to ask Carol if he could use their kitchen, and she didn't mind, but it seemed like she wanted to say something extra. She was interrupted by Estelle, who was particularly interested in his cooking plans, and the guy confirmed that the verdict was something since he even brought some ingredients with him. After some time, the young man moved to the kitchen of the estate, and having prepared for cooking, began to act. But before I started, I noted that they had an extremely huge kitchen, which even had 4 ovens. Dish assumed that this was normal given how much Estelle ate, which surprised him little, unlike the girl herself, who denied what he had said earlier. Carol noted that multiple ovens were necessary to make it much easier to cook several dishes at once, and added that her mistress ate very little. Having accepted all this information, Dish decided to start cooking something interesting, which Estelle was looking forward to. After that, the guy put the cauldron on the fire and began to cook under the crackling coals, while Carol was already waiting with interest for what he was going to cook. The dish wanted to make was bone crackers. When the girls learned about this, they were surprised, because they did not assume and had never heard that such a thing could be eaten. But the guide drew their attention to the fact that even Carol used bone dust in her cooking, and noted that bones also have their own separate taste. The servant, who had previously made the sauce, also added that the bones did indeed have a flavor, although it was slight, and confirmed that the bones had been used in the cooking. Thus, the small fish were fried right with the bones until each bone began to crunch, after which it could be eaten whole, which gave the food a special taste, and it was this taste that Estelle could not wait for with impatience. After this, the servant offered to help the boy with preparing the oil, but he asked him not to worry, because he already had everything prepared in advance. He took a small improvised container from the bag he had prepared, untied the knot on the neck, and poured the liquid from there into the cauldron. Carol noticed that the oil he poured in was already quite liquid for some reason, despite the fact that the fire had not even been lit yet, and the oil smelled much better than its regular counterpart. Asa was delighted and even enjoyed the smell of this oil, noting its wonderful aroma. Then the maid decided to find out what nature this oil had, and learned that Dish used oil from the fire sac of dragon bats. D-rank dim monsters had a predisposition to the element of fire, and from ordinary bats, which also went out to hunt at night, they could, among other things, spew fire, which allowed them to hunt entire swarms of insects. Carol, upon hearing this, was extremely shocked that the guy was going to use monsters for cooking. She added that monsters are not eaten, even though there are exceptions such as those humans who eat monster meat as a delicacy. The second servant also noted that despite the dragon bats having an organ that stores oil, he did not think it was worth eating. Hearing all this, Dish just chuckled along with his pet, while the maid was indignant, not seeing anything funny in it. But the hero remembered his first meeting with Estelle, and her reaction, which was absolutely the same as theirs. But the girl added that monsters are usually not eaten, and was sure that this was a normal reaction to this kind of thing. Asa also confirmed that she had tried a dish made from monsters, and noted that, usually, the carcass of a defeated monster begins to rot almost immediately. But the girl, with drooling in anticipation of the cooking, told what she had learned from Dish. If you manage to cook the meat before it spoils in its raw form, it will turn out very tasty. Instead of explaining himself, the hero suggested that they try it once, and noted that despite the small amount of oil, it was of high quality. But most importantly, It had a wonderful aroma that low-quality oil did not have. Everyone else in the room confirmed the smell coming from the oil, deciding that it was impossible for oil to smell so amazingly spoiled. Instead of using the usual small fish as ingredients for his dish, Dish opted for something different: dragon bat wings. The hero added that these wings not only contained copies of different sizes, but also contained some meat. And most important thing was the long shelf life of the meat of these monsters, which was ideal for a souvenir. So, having cut the wings into pieces that could be easily eaten, he sent them to cook, adding a little salt. The oil was bubbling, exploding in small explosions in the cauldron every second, which could not help but be noted by those present, who compared the hissing of the oil to the stormy applause of fans of a popular performer. Noting the distinct sound that matched the smell of the oil itself, Dish would finish the dish by removing the pieces from the oil after they had turned amber. The hero announced that his special dish, Disha Makana, dragon bone crackers, were ready. While Asel was enchanted by the wonderful aromas of the finished dish, Carol was surprised and, not wanting to tolerate it, urged not to be led by the smell and color, because these were bones and even a monster, and she did not want to give this to her mistress. But Asel noted that her maid was wrong, because Dish had previously treated her to monster dishes, which were very tasty and, what's more, did not lead to her being poisoned. So the adventurer, without any doubt, with faith in the young man and his cooking, decided to try, after which a loud crunch was heard. This sound was noticed not only by Carol, but also by the rest of those present, which is why even the second servant decided to try the dish, while Asel and Juan were already gobbling them up without stopping. Everyone who tried the crackers could not stop and ate more and more, while the maid stood aside, watching this. After some time of hesitation, the girl gave in and also tasted the demon bat cracker, and was extremely surprised and stunned. The next moment, she loudly shouted about how delicious the dish was, which was also confirmed by Asel, who noted the excellent texture of the crackers and the incredibly pleasant crunch after biting into them. Even the servant noted the thin layer of meat around the bones, which he thought added a nice layer of flavor to the dish, while having a completely different texture from the bones themselves. Thus, each of the three of them was completely absorbed by the taste, and noted the amazing spiciness of the fire monster, the perfect level of saltiness, and the deep natural aroma, thanks to which the dish did not become boring at all. At one point, Carol stopped and looked thoughtfully at the cracker she was holding in her hand, and noted that it was simply amazing. Also surprising, in her opinion, was the cook himself, because she herself would not have thought that it was possible to use monster oil. But Dish did not find anything special in this, which surprised the girl. He said that initially he had nothing and had to just wander in the mountains where there were only monsters, which is why he decided to achieve something. Thus, he had no choice but to use the monsters as his food. Peril praised his tenacity, which she was ready to bow before, noting that Dish was very dedicated to his beloved work. The maid also analyzed herself and realized that, without even thinking about the reasons, she thought only about her cooking, only selfishly wanting her victory. Realizing this, Carol was very upset and looked depressed. But the second servant of the Asel family approached her and, putting his hand on her shoulder, reminded her that she herself had something that only she was capable of. While the girl was doubting this, the servant suggested that his mistress drink something, for example, beer, which in his opinion would go well with this salty dish. Noting that this idea was simply excellent, Asel also added, addressing her maid, that she really wanted to eat her cheese together. While Carol herself was slightly stunned, the adventurer told Dish, who had become interested in the cheese, that she simply adored this cheese, which, among other things, went well with alcohol. Asel enthusiastically noted that her subordinate makes simply incredible cheese, which surprised the level 0 chef, and he also asked to try it. Carol stood there, unaware of what was happening, but when she looked at the man who had suggested the idea and saw his friendly smile, she joyfully announced with tears in her eyes that she would now serve this very cheese to the table. Having retired to another room, the girl remembered that she still had her own cooking, and realized that, looking back at others, envying and competing, she had lost sight of the most important thing. Opening the cupboard, the maid took out a smooth head of cheese, and although she did not want to admit it, she realized that the recent meeting had taught her a lot while cutting the cheese. As she placed it on the plate, Carol felt that she had taken a big step forward as a cook that day, and as she carried the cheese to her mistress's table, she only strengthened her intentions to continue trying for a cell. Sometime later, in an abandoned area where dark magic reigned, a cell and a group of adventurers arrived at a cemetery, which was dark despite the noon, to complete a task. The priestess from the group noted that there was once a village in this place, but due to a magical incident, it was wiped off the face of the earth. Another member of the group also added that the bodies of local residents, despite being buried, still reacted with the remnants of magic in the soil. And Aesel noticed that most of the bodies had become ghosts, and the adventurer's task was to destroy the undead. The last member of their group was Dish, who confidently hoped to cook something tasty from the undead, but the others doubted that anything could be made from a ghost. The adventurers expected something strange, since Dish was with them, but they noted that the monsters were different from the bear they had defeated in the past. Asel noted that with all due respect to him, she doubted that he would be able to cook anything from the undead, because they were ghosts. But the hero did not give up, and noted that although it might not be possible to eat the ghosts, deciding from the start that nothing would work out would not lead to anything good. Asel resigned herself to his intentions, but asked him not to leave her, because the area was dangerous, after which she noticed someone approaching her, and noted that he was too close. But when she turned around to look at him, she saw the terrifying face of a ghost staring right at her. The group was surprised by the sudden appearance of a dark element ghost, who, due to his ghostly body, ignored physical attacks and was weak to the light element, and lived in cursed cemeteries and ancient battlefields. The priestess announced that a ghost had appeared and immediately made it clear that someone was controlling it from afar, which meant that it was controlled by a necromancer who was hiding somewhere at that moment. Asel called on everyone to gather, while a huge crowd of ghosts with a variety of faces began to gather in the area. Noticing all the undead, Dish and his divine beast sighed in disappointment, admitting that the ghosts looked inedible. While Asel was surprised that this was the only thing they cared about, one of the girls could not stand being so scared by the ghosts sneaking up on her and declared that she would make them pay for it by covering her glove in flames. Sending a stream of fire into the body of one of the ghosts, the girl defeated him with lightning speed, while the priestess prayed to her god, cleansing the souls of all the ghosts within the radius of the spell. Watching this magical action, Dish was surprised by how the skills Flame and Holy Healing looked. At that moment, Asel warned the hero with a scream about the danger behind him. A ghost was rushing towards him to attack. The girl delivered a chopping blow towards the ghost, but she was unable to cut it because her light speed skill only affected movements, but did not have any element, which was sad for her to admit. The monster, meanwhile, having passed the swordswoman's attack, rushed in the same direction to Asel's loud cries. But the next moment, the ghost was pushed aside by a fluffy tail and disappeared into thin air after one sent it flying. Asel, who was very worried about Dish's life, was surprised by what happened. While the saint told about the rumors that divine beasts possessed an extremely strong holy element, and the situation confirmed that one was a divine beast, Asel thought about what had just happened and sadly admitted that her skill was powerless, making her completely useless in the battle against the incorporeal monsters. But Dish urged her not to be upset and added that he knew how strong she was. The girl, hearing this, admitted that he was right and that the matter was in the monsters, which did not concern her true strength. The next moment, a terrifying voice was heard from behind them, doubting the strength of the adventurers, and was sure that they would not be able to defeat him. When Asel looked back at the monster, the one in front of her was a skeleton mage, who had an A+ rank and the element of darkness. As one of the demons with strong magical power, he was able to manipulate other monsters and use spells. The next second, he announced that he would personally fight the people in front of him, while Asel could not believe that a skeleton mage was standing in front of her. The others also did not understand where the demon came from in this territory, but they remembered how they had already been warned about it. Fawn told them about a bad feeling about a task that didn't seem like a simple ghost exorcism task, and asked them to be careful, after which they realized that it was this demon that caused her to have a premonition. The group recalled that demons had high intelligence, and their strength could compete with lower dragons. The skeleton mage in front of them was so dangerous that only A ranks and above were allowed to kill him. The priestess admitted that they had to be careful with him, after which Asel called on everyone to attack the demon. The group immediately used their Flame and Holy Healing skills, which rushed towards the target in one stream and exploded with a huge explosion upon impact. While the boys were hoping that they had managed to inflict damage, Asel drew their attention to the monster, who had put up an elemental defense. At this moment, the owner of the lightning speed skill called on her comrades to dodge the attack approaching from the sky, which they did not even notice. One of them dodged at the last moment and thanked Asel, while the demon was not going to continue to endure all the avoidances of his enemy's attacks. After that, he raised his staff above himself and began his attack, which turned out to be a dark elemental psychic attack. Despite being resistant to this type of attack, the group still received massive damage, proving the great power of the demon, who at that moment promised to turn them into ghosts. A moment after the group was at a disadvantage, Juan let out a loud howl that immediately neutralized the effect of the skeleton mage's dark magic. The demon did not immediately understand where the howl came from when Dish came out onto the battlefield riding on his pet. The hero turned to Asel with a request. He wanted to get the head of the monster, which stunned the skeleton itself. The swordswoman herself immediately asked why he might need the demon's head, but she already assumed that there was a special purpose for it, which Dish himself confirmed. He was going to cook something tasty out of it. After a short silence, Asel announced with a loud cry that she would fulfill the request, full of inspiration and wanting it herself. The skeleton mage was horrified by the rumbling of her stomach, not understanding where the sound was coming from this time, and even the girl's comrades were surprised by this sound. After asking if Dish had any wishes, the swordswoman realized that he only wanted the skull, while the demon himself was perplexed about what the couple was up to. The next second, Asel, with lightning speed and precision, decapitated the monster with a clear, furious intent to devour it. After this, the skull of the decapitated skeleton bounced off the ground several times and fell straight into the hero's hands. The demon was still alive and ordered the guy to let him go, while he, noting his vitality as a skeleton, demanded that he not twitch while he tied him up with tape. The bound skull tried to say something, but it couldn't even utter a word. Then Asel drew Dish's attention to what was happening nearby. The main body of the magician's skeleton could not orient itself in space without its head, having lost all its grandeur. After seeing this performance, the other two members of the group immediately realized that this was their chance. They both decided that it was time for them to pay for everything, and activated the flame and the linked healing, saying that it might sting a little and asked to be patient. At this time, Asel and Dish watched from the sidelines the screams and terrible sounds that were generated by the efforts of a couple of people and the body of a skeleton, of which nothing remained but ashes, after which Asel admitted that they had managed to successfully complete the mission. After this, the girl asked the hero what he was going to do with the demon's skull, which lay helplessly tied up in the guy's hands. In response to the young man mentioning that the skull was a bone, Asel suggested that he would make crackers again, but Dish explained that such dishes were only made from small bones. While the others doubted the edibility of the skeleton, Asel was confident without any doubt that if Dish said so, it meant so, which showed her strong trust in him. At this point, the demon drew their attention to himself, declaring that he would silence them, not believing that they were seriously considering eating him. But the group was only surprised that he started talking again, noting that despite the fact that only his head remained, his persistence was commendable, which was causing the monster to lose his patience. He declared that even without his body, he could still use magic and was confident that he would be the one to absorb them. But his speech was interrupted by Juan, who grabbed his skull in his teeth, after which the demon begged him to stop all this. The rest of the group watched this, amid the screams and pleas of the skeleton, not very envious of the fate of the skull, but after it was all over, and they remembered him as a strong opponent, rejoicing in the peace that had appeared. Dish then took the skull from Juan, noting that despite the hunger, this was not something he could do, since it was an important tool. At that moment, the skeleton mage decided to take advantage of his opportunity, and loudly declared that this miscalculation would cost them their lives. But the next moment, he was again tied to the problem of being able to do anything. Asel asked Dish about cooking, because she was really looking forward to trying a new dish, but the guy asked her to be patient a little. He explained that this time the cooking would take a little longer, about 3 days to be exact. The hero also announced that if they waited a little, he would treat them to the best monster dish, which was even the best dish that he himself, Dish Machon, had ever prepared. 3 days later, in Dish's house called the Watchman, the whole group with which they had recently defeated the skeleton came to the hero. Asel and the others missed Dish's cooking and wanted to try the dish from the enemy's skull. The swordswoman was just wondering about the demon's fate when the hero pointed his finger at the cauldron of soup she was looking into. A shard floated to the surface of the liquid and stared at Assel with its magical eyes, causing her to be terrified with fear. But it wasn't only the girl who was scared, but also the demon himself, who was surprised to see his enemy here, who was also surprised to see him in the cauldron and still alive. But the skull did not agree with her, because he personally did not feel that he was alive, and he could not forgive her for ensuring this fate for him. Suddenly, the skull jumped out of the cauldron into the air with evil intentions, but was immediately grabbed by Juan while the girl stood nearby in surprise. The divine beast continued to bite the skeleton's skull, who complained about being bitten so hard when Dish approached them, noting their good friendship, something the demon himself fundamentally disagreed with. Assel asked the hero why the monster was boiled alive in the pot, but the guy explained that he was just making broth from the magical skeleton. Hearing this, the entire group was horrified, while indifferently watching the broth bubbling in the cauldron. But Assel already wanted to try it, which she asked Dish about, while the others were surprised that she would actually drink it, assuming that it could make her sick. The girl herself understood all the risks, but she could not overcome her desire to try Dish's cooking, after which the guy scooped up a plate of liquid and served it to her. Assel swallowed, still unsure of what she was about to do, but then took a sip from the plate. The girl remained silent and motionless for a while, after which she was asked about her condition, when she began to giggle and shake. After that, Assel, without asking a word, handed them 2 plates and told them to try the broth. The boys looked at each other before taking a sip from the plate. After this, they enthusiastically admitted that what they had just tasted was very tasty. At that moment, the skull spoke furiously about what a delicious broth it made, but then realized that it was made from him and demanded to bow down before it. But his speech was once again interrupted by the capture of Juan, after which the demon could only beg for forgiveness. Meanwhile, the adventurers praised the broth from the magical monster, because none of them thought it would turn out so tasty, and Assel asked how the hero managed to make it so tasty. Dish recalled that broth could be made from any bones, including chicken or pork bones. The skull was similar to such bones, which is why the taste might have seemed familiar to them. But at the same time, it did not compare to what they tasted at that moment. But Assel, despite the fact that she understood that bones could be boiled for broth, could not understand how Dish managed to make it so tasty. But the young man explained that the skeleton mage was not just a demon, but a monster with a magical skeleton, which, among other things, did not improve the girl's understanding. Then Dish continued, saying that the monster would die the moment its magic ran out, and that for such entities, mana was the source of life. The guy also noticed that the demon was actually alive, which meant that despite his condition, he had mana. Dish also noted that for monsters, mana was the most important thing in life, but the skeleton mage himself was different, because unlike those who had skin, meat, and organs, he consisted only of bones. Having told all this, he asked the guys which of the monsters had more mana, the one with meat and skin, or only with bones, in the hope that they themselves would guess the answer to their question. The group immediately understood what he was getting at, realizing that unlike normal beasts, whose mana flowed through all parts of their bodies, the demon's mana was stored and moved only in the bones. Thus, due to the abundant amount of mana in the head and skull, the broth from the skeleton mage turned out so delicious. Assel was glad to understand how such a delicacy was created, but the next second she thought about something. She was wondering how Dish himself knew that it would work. The rest of the group also added that this kind of monster was almost never encountered anywhere, and assumed that the hero had already prepared it before. But the young man replied that it was his first time preparing a demon, which made Assel indignant, because he had no guarantee of success which, among other things, the young man himself did not worry about, because everything worked out for him. The swordswoman assumed that Dish thought so based on his experience, but he admitted that he actually had something like a premonition. Assel reminded him that even risk always had its limits, and she could not imagine an outcome in which the broth would turn out tasteless. But the hero noted that the whole charm of cooking lay in the risky decisions, which the girl herself also confirmed in her thoughts, because cooking was a science of trial and error. The next moment, Dish announced that he had not yet finished making the soup, thus exciting the group, who had completely forgotten about it. Each member of the group offered their own ideas, such as stewing the meat and vegetables, or cooking it all in a hot pot, or even making risotto. But Dish, without denying that the choice was not bad, decided to cook nothing else but ramen. The boys were surprised by his decision, remembering what ramen was like. It was an oriental noodle dish, a kind of soup made of noodles, meat, vegetables, and broth, which became popular about 500 years ago and was already on the menu of popular establishments. They decided that this solution might actually work best for their case, after which they decided to rely on the guy to cook. Announcing that 3 servings of ramen were needed, Dish happily and confidently began cooking. Before starting cooking, Dish tied his hair with a headband and began preparing the dish by preparing the sauce with salt, which he decided to choose this time. The guy expected the sauce to complement the broth, but Isel added that the taste of salt would be an accent in their dish. To prepare the sauce, dry seaweed had to be boiled and mixed with salt. After that, the hero began adding meat, and chose a piece that his cooking partner immediately recognized. It was the bear's shoulder that had filled one of his most delicious past dishes, and she was glad to try something like that again. Dish added lime candies with fish sauce to this meat to adjust the flavor, and also added a little dragon oil. After that, the guy left it all to simmer for a bit, while he moved on to preparing the next stages. So, it was a turn of the green onions and yellow jellyfish, which he decided to cut, armed with a dagger. After some time, he opened the cauldron to find the meat in the required condition, having a good taste. Smelling the wonderful aroma of the not-yet-ready dish, Isel could barely restrain herself from jumping into the pot, but Dish calmed her down. After that, he cut into the meat, which literally sparkled, causing the rest of the group to also lose patience when they saw the combination of meat fat, sauce, and broth. After that, one of the girls, while the others turned away, fighting the desire to try Dish's cooking, asked the guy what he was going to do with the noodles. After this reminder, Isel admitted that she had completely forgotten about the noodles, but Dish had already prepared everything, noting that he usually uses wheat flour. But this time, he decided to try something different. This type of noodles surprised the adventurers when the young man took it out of a small bag. Asael noticed its similarity to paste, but also noticed that it was too white to be regular paste and asked about it. The hero answered that it was a lanya, thread dried in the sun. The girl was surprised to hear about this because Alanya was a monster of the different type, with the element of earth, who knew how to mimic and chose to use the web as a hunting method. The young man added that one of these had recently spun a web, which he had collected and dried, and despite others' doubts about its edibility, he was sure that it was tasty, because it contained mana. Dis also pointed out to others that the demon and spider monster in one dish was a great combination, which the others couldn't help but agree with. After putting the noodles in the pot, the cook let them soften and start to cook, during which they literally shone. Aso couldn't help but notice how the threads became silky as soon as they were put in hot water. Then Dish, with simple but deft and quick movements, placed the empty plates on the table and poured the broth into them. Then he added some noodles, threw in a few pieces of meat, and announced that his dish was ready. Thus, Disha Makana's special dish, Demon Bone Ramen, was ready. Everyone present was delighted by the sight of the ramen and could not stand it any longer. The dish used the main ingredient, bear meat, the shoulder of which was stewed and seasoned with lime candies with fish sauce as a regulator. The noodles that glowed like silver and the sauce made from dried seaweed and salt attracted everyone who looked at them. The skillfully condemned ramen, carefully served to the table with chopsticks, was already waiting to fall into the stomachs of adventurers who devoured it even with just one look. Asel, armed with a spoon and chopsticks, began to eat, having first drunk a little broth from a spoon, as did the others. Everyone at the table exclaimed in admiration of the magnificence of the dish. Some commented on the divine, deep flavor and the compatibility of the salt and seaweed sauce with the broth. Someone noticed a feeling of eternity that passed through the whole body and could not stop his hand, which did nothing but bring the spoon to the mouth. Even Asel enthusiastically said that the taste of the dish spoke to her about the true taste of ramen. Literally moments later, they didn't even notice how the broth in the plate had run out, leaving the rest of the ingredients alone. The boys felt like they were being mocked and didn't understand what kind of ability it was. But Dish explained to them that they had drunk it all themselves while the skull was doubting their mental abilities. But the hero also added that it was soup and advised them to think about the order next time, and gave them more while they were apologizing. After receiving their second helping, everyone began eating the noodles, taking a long, drawn-out strand of noodles into their mouths with their chopsticks. A few moments later, everyone was engrossed in their noodles and did not say a word as they sucked down more and more noodles. Everyone was amazed by the taste and engrossed in eating the food, when Dish asked their opinion about his cooking. With this question, he brought the boys back to consciousness, after which Asel confirmed that the dish was indeed delicious, which made her even shake, constantly repeating that it was delicious, which even the demon was horrified by. At that moment, tears began to drip onto the table. It was Fram who was shedding tears and could not stop them because of how delicious what he ate was, and he was glad that he was born into this world. Even Eliza saw her grandfather in front of her, across from the river, waving his hand at her. At that moment, her soul almost evaporated from her body, onto the sensation of incense, while the demon noticed that they were going crazy. While the skull was clearly convinced that the adventurers had broken, Dish noted that it was because of his mana, and decided to try his dish too, after which he saw space and stars. Clutching his head, the hero declared that the demon could be proud of himself because, in his opinion, the ramen really turned out delicious. The skeleton mage was confused, and disconfirmed his thoughts, also noting that he himself had hit the nail on the head when he decided to use Alanya's web for ramen. The threads of the web were very thin and tough, but after cooking, they were like silk, and Assel added that the noodles were not only soft, but also incredibly tender, so no noodles could compare with them. Fram felt like he was born just for this ramen, and noted that the addition of green onions and seaweed made the biting experience absolutely delicious. They both compared themselves very poorly to this culinary masterpiece, realizing that they were involuntarily sweating and crying. At this point, Eliza decided to move on to the last element of the ramen, the meat. As everyone took a bite, they were struck by new taste sensations. The priestess noted that although the lime flavor was dominant, she felt like she was eating steak. Meanwhile, Asel was gobbling up the noodles, mixing all the flavors in her mouth, reaching a simply superb level. And they finished this dish, drinking a last remnants of the broth through the neck of the plate, and thanked Dish and the food, because no other words came to their minds. In fact, Fromm even noted that the initial sensations were beyond words, but by the end of the dish, he had completely exhausted his entire vocabulary. Even Eliza was surprised at how Dish managed to make his special dish at all, adding that he managed to bring out all the right flavors from each ingredient and tie them together, which was truly genius. At that moment, the proud skull of the skeleton mage was pleased with how he had knocked these adventurers down with his stunningness. But Asel reminded him that they had only made broth out of him, albeit a good one. The girl also realized again that Dish, a level 0 chef, had no rivals while Juan was messing around with the demon. And something happened. At this time, in the capital of the Kingdom of Carbania, in the city's castle, in one of the dining halls, a girl complained about the monotony of the food, which she was already quite tired of. She hoped that there was at least someone in this world who could satisfy her with their cooking, while the hero was currently trying to attach the jaw back to the skull. After some time, in that part of the world of Runlud in which Dish lived, in a country that had 4 seasons and was famous for its hot and humid climate, summer came, and for the hero, who lived in the mountains all this time, the summer was unbearably hot and hellish. The guy was complaining about this, with a fishing rod by the lake, realizing that if the temperature continues to rise, the quality of the meat will begin to rapidly decline, which is why he decided to start fishing. But he was not getting any bites. He wanted to prepare the summer fish iwaz, which leaves its fat reserves for autumn, and could be prepared as sashimi with salt and in combination with madaraj grass, which was extremely exquisite. At this point in the young man's speech, Asel suddenly came up to him from behind, frightening the guy, and said that she saw him there completely by accident. In fact, the girl couldn't say that she was exterminating monsters nearby, when, suddenly noticing him, her tasty food sensor instinctively worked, pointing straight at Dish. At this moment, the rest of her group lost sight of their comrade and could not understand where exactly she had gone. After this, Dish noted that the girl was sweating heavily and assumed that she had run as fast as she could to the place where he was at that moment. Asa confirmed that there was a lot of sweat, blaming it all on the excessive heat, and decided that in this situation, all she could do was take off all her armor to finally get some fresh air. After she took off her steel shoulder pads and gloves, the girl asked him how she looked, but Dish didn't even look at her, absorbed in fishing and complaining that he had no bite. Just like Assel and her thoughts, the guy realized that the Ibis he wanted was not there that day, after which he turned his attention a little to the side. The one frolicked in the water with the demon's skull and caught fish jumping from the lake, while his master could not understand why he was not catching fish. Even though Dish had already collected the required amount of fish for dinner, he wanted to catch at least one ibis. While he was thinking about this, someone sat on his hook. The guy joyfully and enthusiastically, with Asel's support, began to wield the fishing rod, and then finally caught something with beautiful fins. This catch was a small spirit in the form of a mermaid, who was very unhappy to be caught on the hook of a fishing rod by the cheek. While the couple standing by the shore were stunned by the production, the spirit waved her arms and begged the hero to take her off the hook, and quickly, after which he apologized and inquired about Wendel's condition. Asel and Wan, who were standing nearby with the demon, were surprised to hear the spirit's name. They knew that this little mermaid was the very same water spirit, Mrs. Wendell, their enemy from the underwater world, who was capable of creating natural disasters. Having confirmed her assumptions, the spirit immediately called the girl a knight of light speed, and even recognized the skeleton demon, which Asel was sincerely surprised by. But for Wendell, it was natural, because she was a water spirit. In fact, the mermaid heard the voices of everyone who was near any water or reservoir, and rumors about the Knight of Lightspeed did not pass by such places, which the girl herself was grateful and happy about. Wendell also noted the broth from the skeleton's skull, thereby mocking him. But Asel at that moment noted the friendly relations between Dish and the spirit. The hero himself also confirmed this, saying that she loved his oven and sometimes dropped in to eat, just like Asel herself. But the mermaid was embarrassed and indignant, not wanting to admit that she liked the food that the man cooked, assuring them that she loved the food of her world much more. Hearing about this, Dish stroked her head and laughed at her words, not believing any of them at all. Asel also realized that Dish got along not only with the sacred beast, but also with the spirit of water. But then she accepted this fact, because it was Dish, and no one else who was such a person. Among other things, the hero addressed the spirit with a certain request, which Wendell herself immediately understood, because it was just summertime. At this point, Asel asked about the subject of the conversation, not understanding what they meant at all. Then Dish and Wendell proudly announced that summer marked the beginning of the frozen ices. Upon hearing this, both the skeleton mage and the girl standing next to him were greatly surprised by this news. Asel said that they had gone deeper into the forest. Wendell turned to Dish and asked how long he would be there. Dish replied that he needed a little more time. A little later, the young man smiled and said that this area would be perfect. Asel asked him what he was going to do, since she had actually come here to hunt. At this time, Asel's group was being broken up by monsters. Asel said that everything would be fine with her group because they would cope on their own. Dish looked at the girl questioningly. Then the young man said that they had come and that they would look for a hole here. Asel asked what hole he was talking about. Dish answered that it was where Frostbale hibernated. Frostbale is a huge and strong monster that is a dangerous monster due to its ability to run quickly on snow and ice. In the summer, it hibernates and rarely leaves its burrow. Asel was surprised and said that she remembered that it was not easy to defeat him. But do monsters have hibernation? Dish answered that it was most likely summer hibernation. They dig a hole in the ground and sleep there. Asel said that this was the first time she had heard of this. But when she had encountered these monsters, it was in winter. She asked about how Frostbale and frozen ice were related to each other. Dish smiled and told the girl that if she met him, she would go herself. Suddenly, he discovered something. They saw a small hole. Asel thought that this was Frostbale's norm. Wendell hurried the boys because she was very hungry. Dish asked her to wait a little. Then he took a twig and began to rummage around in her norms. Suddenly, Asel felt some noise and rumble. Dish shouted to her that she needed to run. Asel was surprised and asked him to stop. A beam of some kind came out of the hole and then snow started falling. Dish said that everything went well. He apologized to his comrades because he wanted to scare them. Then the young man turned around and asked Asel what had happened. The girl was shaking all over, so he thought something had happened. The young man took her hand and Asel became embarrassed. She screamed that everything was fine, but Dish's hand was so small but so rough, like a real man's. Dish didn't understand what Asel was talking about. Asel pointed to her hand, so Dish apologized and said that he had instinctively grabbed her hand. After a while, the boy was collecting snow. He crumpled up a snowball and gave it to Wendell. The girl took a bite and said it was very cold. Suddenly, it dawned on Asel that they were using this ice for frozen ice. Wendell said that if there was ice, the large pieces would be inconvenient to eat, so they would chop them up. Dish started cooking. Asel saw lime candies. Dish agreed and added goat milk to the bowl. Asel was delighted by the delicious aroma. Finally, Disha Makana's special dessert, called Frostbale's frozen ice with goat's milk, was ready. The girls were delighted with the new dish and started gobbling it up. Asel said that the little snow crumbs melt as soon as they get into your mouth. Wendell added that it immediately feels so good, and it's a wonderful feeling. Adding goat milk was a great idea. Asel added that it tastes sweeter, and the lime candies add a little bit. Wendell added that her teeth bite into this texture with great pleasure, and it is very easy to chew. The boys enjoyed it, and then realized that the aftertaste was kind of harsh. Dish laughed and said that Wendell and Asel couldn't stand it either, but they were great tasters. The boys asked for more. Some time later, Dish was lying on his bed. He said that summer is of course ice, so he couldn't catch Ivan, but Juan caught him, so everything is fine. He remembered Asel and her red face. Dish asked if she was okay. Then he got up from the bed and approached Wendell, who was lying in the water. Will took the spirit of water and moved it to another place. The skeletons saw mineral water. Disagreed and said that it was pure mineral water, and that was how they prepared it. The skeleton replied that it was a little different from his method of getting water. Dish replied that they would finally be able to eat white rice again. A little later, when Asel returned, she was punished for abandoning her teammates on a hunt. As punishment, she had to make frozen ice for herself. At that time, there was some noise in the forest. The knight said that the princess had run away. The occupation that relieved her from Skuzi was hunting monsters. He knew it could end badly. They chose the lowest monster, but she didn't like it. The knights realized the princess was in danger. At this time, the girl fought with strong monsters. She was happy because this was the hunt she dreamed of. She was the princess of the kingdom of Carbania, Aristel. The knights thought about the princess's skill that could mix elements. This ability is incredible, but the princess is too young and has a bad character. At this time, the girl was proud of her strength. Then she looked back and realized that she was quite late, so it was time for her to go. She opened her bag to get the medicine, but it was not there. Sometime later, the girl realized that she was lost. Her mana was completely gone, and if a monster attacked her, she would not be able to defeat it. Then her stomach growled. The girl realized that she was hungry, but suddenly she saw someone's shadow in the distance. She looked closer and saw a huge monster. The girl felt a strong pressure and realized that she could not take a step from one look. She understood that she would definitely not be able to overcome him. The girl began to shake and beg her dad and mom to save her. Suddenly, Dish appeared behind the wolf and asked the girl if she was okay. The girl was surprised that Dish was sitting on the back of this monster. Suddenly, her stomach began to rumble. Dish realized she was hungry and asked her to wait a second because he was taking something with him. The girl thought Dish was strange, but not like a monster. Dish started to take out food, and the girl was happy, and then she realized that she would not eat what some stranger was shoving at her. However, if it was prepared by people from the village, then she should eat it. But Dish was suspicious. Dish handed her a candy. The girl was surprised and realized that it was because of the candy that she was so worried. She realized that the candy was very sweet, but it also had flavors from different herbs. The girl was surprised and said that she didn't understand anything and what kind of unusual candy it was. Dish was surprised and then said, "Something just lime." The girl was surprised. She screamed, and Asel heard the scream. She was asked what had happened, and then Asel replied that she had misheard something. She said that she wanted to try lime candies again. She was asked to finish the job first. At this time, Dish and Juan were walking through the forest. The girl thought that she, the princess, would be given candy, but luckily they were tasty. Then she turned to the young man and asked his name. Dish introduced himself and asked the girl's name. The girl smiled and said that she would introduce herself especially for him. Dish turned away indifferently. The girl screamed and asked him to listen to the end, because she rarely does that. She says her name is Aristel Ellen Carbania. Dish says that name is too long, can he just call the girl Alice? She got angry with him and couldn't understand how someone like Dish could make such a delicious candy. She asked if the young man had been taught by anyone. Dish replied that he had made the candy himself. Alice asked him about his abilities, but Dish replied that he was actually zero and had no abilities. Alice was surprised. Then she laughed and said that this was why the boy was hiding there, so that he wouldn't be laughed at. Dish froze in place. Alice realized that he was angry, but Dish silently began to approach her. Alice began to apologize to the boy. Dish asked her why she was apologizing and then asked her to move away because she was blocking the space. Alice did not understand what the young man was doing. Dish replied that he was preparing the camp. Alice was surprised that he wasn't angry. Dish replied that he was used to being laughed at. Then Alice realized what camp the young man was talking about and got angry. Dish replied that the girl followed him herself, and no one forced her. Alice screamed that she wanted to sleep on the bed. Dish replied that his house was quite far from here, and it was already night, and the monsters would soon wake up. Suddenly, Alice's stomach growled again. Alice asked the boy if he would like some more food, but Dish replied that she had eaten all the candy. Alice looked at Dish and thought that this was adventure. She knew about dangers, but she didn't think that adventures were strange. Alice was sad and thought that she was worthless. She then turned to Dish and asked about Wyon. She wondered why Dish, who had no powers, was living with such a powerful monster. She was interrupted by Dish, who looked at Wyon and said that he had brought something. Wyon had brought ice. Sometime later, Dish was making beer potatoes. Dish said that there was no alcohol in the potatoes, so Alice could eat them. Alice asked why the potatoes were frozen. Dish said that the snow mice had them. The snow mouse is a small monster. They are most numerous in early spring. They freeze food and feed on it in winter, since hunting is impossible at this time. They are not particularly dangerous monsters, but if you touch them, you can get frostbite. Alice sighed and Dish asked her what had happened. Alice said the potatoes were not really good for eating. Dish got angry. He said that in that case he would cook it so that the girl could enjoy it. Alice thought that she still didn't trust Dish. She was surprised by the lime candy, but she knows the taste of perfectly cooked potatoes. But she is interested in Dish's methods. She saw Dish put coals in the cauldron and potatoes on top. She thought that this could not even be called cooking. Suddenly, Alice felt something. She was surprised by the interesting smell. Alice couldn't believe her eyes. She saw that the potatoes were simply frying on the stones. She was delighted that the longer she waited, the more she wanted to eat it. Dish looked at the potatoes happily and smelled the aroma. Then he told Alice that the potatoes were ready. He showed Dish Makan's specialty, called stone-fried beer potatoes. Alice took the hot potato in her hands, but Dish gave her a leaf. Alice thought it was hot, but the sensation of roasting on the stones was indescribable. Then Alice felt a strong smell of potatoes. She saw a beautiful golden color and a soft and tender texture. Alice tried the dish and was amazed by its taste. She said it was some kind of potato cream. She asked Dish how he could do it so well, since he just fried it on the rocks. Dish replied that it was all a matter of temperature and time. Alice asked him what he meant. She thought of Dish keeping the potatoes on the fire for quite a long time and slowly raising the temperature. Dish said that potatoes become sweeter when they are cooked at a higher temperature. He experimented a lot and came up with the idea of roasting potatoes on stones. Alice said that Dish was lying, that he was a zero. She realized that he was hiding something from her, and how could he create something so delicious without abilities? Dish replied that it was true. Otherwise, he would not have to live among the mountains and forests. Alice realized that it was too dangerous to be there and then said that she had been very rude to him, so she apologized. Dish smiled and asked the girl if she liked his food. Alice agreed. A little later, Alice ate her fill and thought that she had met an amazing person and tasted an amazing dish in such a remote place. Then the girl decided and asked Dish to become someone. But before she could finish speaking, air came out of one of her places. The girl was embarrassed. Dish was about to say something, but she ordered him not to tell her. A little later, Alice came down from the mountains and reached the castle. Her parents scolded her very much, but the princess told them about her adventure. Sometimes she looked out the window and saw a mountain, and then she had a desire to eat potatoes. A little later, Dish was looking at a large castle. He thought that it looked very powerful. Asel called out to him, surprised that Dish had received an invitation from the princess, although he had refused 3 times. Asel didn't understand why the princess invited him. She realized that she would be able to try Dish's food again, and she didn't care about anything that was happening. Then Dish asked Asel about her wounds. Asel said that the medicine would soon run out, so she would go to the pharmacy. Dish gave her the herb Iodamogi. Then Asel told Dish about his appearance, in which he was going to appear in the royal palace. She understood that he needed to be dressed up first. A little later, Asel was waiting for Disha. The maid said that they had finished dressing Disha. Asel was happy. Suddenly, Dish appeared. Asel was surprised, but Dish asked the girl not to look at him like that. Asel apologized. Then she looked at Juan, who was also beautiful. They went to the princess. Alice was glad that they had come, but then she saw the transformed Dish and did not recognize him. Dish turned to Alice and said it was him. Asel was surprised and told Dish not to call the princess that. Alice said that this image suits Dish. Asel didn't understand what all this meant. Alice said that she and Dish had met once. The beer potatoes fried on the stones were very tasty. Asel screamed and told the princess that it was unfair. Alice replied that it was Asel who was being unfair when she hid such a cook from her. Asel apologized. Alice said that she wanted Dish to cook something else for her. Asel agreed and told about how they ate a monster. Alice was surprised. Asel said that she feasted on dishes that had some parts of monsters. Alice was surprised that Dish could cook such things. Alice then apologized for asking Disha for a favor right after arriving, but she asks him to cook something for her right away since her stomach is empty. Dish replied that he didn't want to do that. Everyone was surprised. Alice asked him again. Dish replied that he refused to do it. Alice asked the reason, but Dish replied that he was not in the mood. Asel thought that this was not like Dish at all. Alice asked Asel for help and said that she was Dish's friend, so she had to dissuade him. Asel replied that Dish didn't want to cook, so it was unlikely that he could be forced. They changed his appearance and brought him to the castle by force. Asel apologized for her mistake and then realized that Dish was probably not used to the city yet. Asel asked the princess to wait until she brought Dish back to normal. Alice realized that there was nothing she could do, because for a cook, hands and soul are important. She replied that she would trust the girl, and then asked what she was going to do. Asel replied that Dish is a person who grew up in the middle of cooking. If the current location does not match, then you just need to find a place similar to his habitat. The kitchen is all in motion. A pot of food is boiling, huge animal skins are hanging, and dishes are being prepared. Everyone is watching the process attentively. She is putting food on a plate, filling the meat with fresh vegetables. She happily and proudly shouts to Dish how he likes this. She turns around and sees that the plate with food is no longer there. He looks at the dishes in shock and shouts that it is cool, asks what it is it really a copper pot? An awkward silence follows. Dish turns to see several chefs whispering among themselves, discussing the dishes. He approaches them, wondering what is wrong with them. His gaze suddenly freezes, seeing something in front of him. He sees a plate with a dish. In the middle is a side dish of rice, and around it is meat and gravy. The chef asks Dish to introduce himself. He is surprised that he is really being asked. He introduces himself. The cook says with a smile that he is the famous cook whose cooking the princess loved so much. He kindly asks why he is here. Then Asel comes out and with a serious expression says that he received an invitation from the princess. She asks if they can find out what is going on here. He, as she sees it, is very interested in all this. Dish asks in surprise, pointing to the food, "Is it really true that no one will eat this anymore?" The cooks answer suspiciously and doubtfully that they will not. Then Dish asks if he can try. They are even more surprised. He takes a spoon, tries a piece. He takes a spoon, tries a piece. His face breaks into a smile. He says it's so delicious. He says the emphasis is on texture. He felt it right away and the sugar is just right. He thinks to himself that they know a lot about desserts, especially the combination of sugar and milk. They did it just perfectly. First the throat and then the stomach cooled down, and it all happens so gradually. He thinks now about chocolate. What an interesting sound it makes in the mouth. They try to add chocolate in moderation. But to the touch, it is a little bitter, and this is so good to feel together with sweet ice cream. All this reminds him very much of his recipes. Dish says with a smile that this is the first time in a long time that he has eaten a dish that someone else has prepared. He thinks it is very tasty and calls them simply the best. Here, Asel rudely shouts at Daisha to watch his language. The cook shakes his head and tells Asel that this is not necessary, and he thanks the young man. His words give them courage for further work. Dish smiles broadly and says that he understands, because for cooks, delicious is like a medal. Asel looks at him with a smile and thinks that his mood has improved. The cook says that lately the princess does not like his cooking. Dish doesn't understand and says that it's so delicious. What didn't she like about it? The cook voices what she said when they were taking the food away. She said that the taste is not bad, but it looks really bad to her. Dish ponders the appearance of food and says that it is true that food should also be attractive in appearance. He ponders that the princess was not just being capricious, but gave them a hint as to what was wrong. Then he hears a noise and turns around. There, one is yelling at the other, "What is he doing?" And he awkwardly apologizes. They shout at him that he is bleeding, so he should leave her immediately. In Dish's thoughts, everything is mixed up. The color, the medicines, and the appearance. He scratches his head and tries to think of something. He asks his uncle how he likes it. At this time, the princess is walking from side to side in the room. Something is bothering her. She thinks, somewhat compulsively, that if she ordered him to cook, he would do it right away. But even now, Dish brings nothing. She wonders aloud if he hates her. She says that maybe it's all because of that incident. She's been making too many mistakes lately. She talks about the ice cream she had recently. She threw it away. And when she was asked the reason, she said that something was missing in her appearance. She blurted out what came to mind first. She understands that she did so badly, but now she has to think about how to apologize to Dish. Just then he comes in and asks Alice if she is here. The princess screams in fright from surprise. She turns around and sees Daisha and the cook. She gets tensed and thinks that this is the one who made her ice cream. This is her cook. He is one of the best in the whole kingdom and she trusts him, but she doesn't understand at all why he is with Dish now. They are probably both angry with her now. She knows that she is to blame, so she decides that she needs to apologize. Here the cook turns to the princess and says that, as she asked, they tried to add something in the appearance. He opens the dish, lifting the lid. As soon as air gets in, a huge smoke appears. Alice is shocked and asks what it is. Seeing the princess's reaction, Dish smirks, thinking about his success. The princess looks at the ice cream and thinks what a beautiful green color. The cook calmly tells the princess that she is surprised. Alice watches silently and thinks that she has never seen such green ice cream. The cook says that they corrected the previous ice cream according to her advice. The princess does not understand and asks what advice they are talking about. She remembers that she said that it tasted good, but it looks really bad. She lets out a silent scream in shock. She thinks hard that she can't say now that it was on purpose. She's too embarrassed. The cook asks her with a smile she could try it. She takes the spoon with trembling hands and thinks that it really is what she asked for. But nevertheless, something is wrong. She tries the ice cream. She suddenly screams because it is too cold for her. She feels this excitement in her chest. That feeling when in extreme heat a cool breeze blows on her. It may even be a snowstorm. She eats more and thinks that this is not bad at all. The cook asks her how she likes it. She answers him with a smile and confidence that it is very tasty. The cook bows and thanks her. And the princess does not stop admiring it and says that the texture is perfect. The addition of milk and sugar makes the taste even sweeter. The bitterness of the chocolate is magnificent, just taken out of the refrigerator. The solid chocolate is just asking to be bitten. She continues to eat and thinks to herself that this is a wonderful combination of all the ingredients. She is in seventh heaven. She thinks with great pleasure that she is completely satisfied. She gets stuck in her thoughts. Dish calls her and asks if it was tasty. The princess asks him if he really cooked it. He answers that it is not so. His uncle did it. He says with a smile that he only helped him a little. The princess did not expect such an answer. The cook says that if it weren't for Dish's idea, he wouldn't have thought that they could surprise her so much. He was able to surprise the princess so much. He puts his hand on Dish's shoulder and says that all the credit goes to him. Asel looks and thinks that she also knows this man. He is one of the most skilled cooks in all of Cabana. She thinks that he recognized the cooking of some young man. She will give him the title of the most delicious ice cream in the entire kingdom. The princess asks Dish to tell how he made this ice cream so delicious. She is eager to know about it. Dish replies that there is nothing special. He just put a yogamogi leaf there. The princess does not understand and asks again about it. The herb yogodamogi is very popular for medicinal purposes. If applied to a wound, it will immediately heal. It can also become a cure for stomach pain. If mixed with divine water, you can get a drink that restores strength and mana. He says that he brought freshly picked yodomaga leaves, crumbled them into ice cream, and they called it chocolate ice cream in a cup with the medicinal herb yodomaga. The princess says that she didn't know that just adding grass would make it so tasty. Dish tells her that she's wrong. It's not about taste. He tells her that yodomogi heals her from the inside. She understands, and Dish jokingly asks, "It wasn't that bad." The princess smiles and shouts that they did a good job. She will give him the title of the most delicious ice cream in the whole kingdom. The cook bows and thanks her. The other cooks jump for joy. The princess says that it seems that her taste buds did not lie, and to herself she thinks that she will leave it like this. Then, she said about the appearance for a reason, and now she invites Dish to return to that conversation. She talks about the reason why she called him. She asks if he could make another ice cream. She says that there is a person who must definitely try it. They walk. Dish turns and asks Alice if she is okay. She replies that she is okay. They definitely need to get this ingredient. They come to the girl. She greets Alice. Dish looks at her for a long time and then asks who she is. She frighteningly tells him how impolite it is. Alice shouts that it is the Queen of Kelbania, Emma Razin. The Queen smiles and says that it is not worth it. She brings the ice cream and asks her mother to try it. She says that it is simply the best ice cream in the history of the kingdom. Emma looks and asks if that is really true. She brings a spoonful of ice cream to herself and tries it. She says with her eyes closed that it is a wonderful combination of sweet ice cream and dark chocolate. She's not experienced such pleasure from ice cream for a long time. She asks what they added to it. The princess says it is a leaf of yodomogi. Emma says kindly that this is the one who saved Alice during that incident. She offers him her sincere gratitude. Dis begins to blush. And Alice says that there is still a lot of ice cream. Emma apologizes to Alice and says that she has no appetite today. The three of them leave together with Estelle. They walk, and Estelle asks if she really didn't like Dish's cooking. Alice calms her down and says that it's not like that. Mom is always like that. She thought that if it was cooked by him, she would eat it. Dis asks, "She didn't look very well. Is her mother really that unwell?" She demands that he call her queen. The cook tells Dish that the queen's health is poor and that lately she has become more withdrawn due to the heat. Her phrase that she has no appetite has become an acute problem. He says their cooks try their best through trial and error, but to no avail, and in recent days she has been eating only chopped apples. That's why they called Dish. They had to tell him right away that his mother was sick. They were hiding it so as not to disturb the residents. It would be very dangerous if this information spread. They held so many meetings, but all in vain. The doctor said that she was infected with an unknown disease. The queen could not withstand extreme heat. Perhaps she had heart problems. Neither the cooks nor the doctors can understand what is going on. Alice begins to feel sad and plaintively calls for her mother. Dish watches attentively and tries to come up with a solution. He turns to his uncles and asks if they have tried using medicinal herbs. They say that they gave the queen the best potion to drink. Nothing changed. Dish asks what about the seven-colored flower. Seven-flowered plant is a medicinal herb, which was so named because of its property of shimmering with rainbow colors. A very rare species, also known as a miracle herb. Its action is so effective that they say that it can resurrect. The doctors are horrified and ask if he understands what he is talking about. This is the most powerful medicinal herb in their kingdom. Estelle asks him to wait and asks Dish if he can do it. He replies that this is not true. He has never tried it. Assel angrily shouts, "Is he really familiar with such people?" They ask if it is really a person. Alice asks if it is a spirit or a magical beast. He says that he knows it, but is not familiar with it. It is a Caledonian boar. This is a monster that looks like a huge boar, reaches a height of about a 2-story building, is very strong. It is almost impossible to stop its attack. Its uniqueness is that it loves luxurious food, is very picky about food. He says that he eats foods that a person cannot even dream of. And she shouts that it is still a monster. He replies that he saw it only once. This 7-colored Caledonian boar. The girls are shocked and ask again. He says that this happens very often with monsters. The effect of food is reflected on their body, which means he knows where this grass grows. Alice says that she understands. Then she suggests going for this herb. Asao asks fearfully if the princess really wants to go with them, and she sternly says that this is not up for discussion. She explains that we are talking about her mother. She cannot leave it like this. Asel says in fear that if something happens, Alice interrupts and says that she understands everything, but she cannot sit idly by in such a situation, so she asks Asel not to object. Alice declares that it is necessary to find this seven-flower garden in order to save her mother. She says that this is a request. Here, Asel says that from this moment on, she, as the Light Knight Asel, takes responsibility, and the life of Princess Eris into her own hands. She vows to protect her and find the seven-colored flower. Alice is surprised by Asel's reaction. Then the knights come to them and turn to Mrs. Asel. They ask to be allowed to help them. It is their duty to protect the princess. Asel is surprised and admires the knights. The cook also joins in and says that they must prepare dinners for more than 3, and that the help of other cooks will be needed. Alice is silent, and then wipes away her tears, saying that she has always been so capricious. Dish tells Alice with a smile that he is happy for her. And you tell him that it is all thanks to him. She thanks him. She thanks him. She thinks about her mother and mentally promises that she will definitely save her. Alice says on the way that they have finally arrived. Asel says with doubt that this is so, but she has come to this place several times to destroy monsters, but has never seen the seven-colored flower. Asks Asel if she doesn't know what a seven-colored flower is. Then they hear a noise and twitch. Asel frighteningly guesses what it is. They look at the boars from the bushes. Asel asks Dish if this is the seven-colored Caledonian boar. Dish says that if you look from this distance, he does not see the same one yet. Alice thoughtfully says that it means it is not that simple. Dish says that he is absolutely sure that it can be found, and he has come up with a rather interesting way. Asel asks what he has come up with. Dish says that it needs to rain. Asel does not understand and asks again why. Dish explains that the seven-colored flower shows itself when it rains, and that's what they need to arrange. They ask him if everything will definitely work out, and he replies that they won't know until they try. Here, Alice agrees and says that she will do it. Asel asks her if she is sure this spell is needed. She does not finish the sentence, because Alice states that she is sure. This is all for saving her mother, so she asks to allow her to do it. She uses weather-changing magic and causes a torrential rain by casting a spell. Then the clouds gather above them. Everyone is surprised, and then it starts to rain. Everyone is shocked that she managed to do such complex magic, and asks the princess if she is okay. Alice asks if this is enough for the seven-colored flower. Dish says with a smile that she is good, let her look. They see numerous rainbows on the ground. The princess herself is shocked and enchanted. She doesn't understand and asks what it means. A rainbow is usually in the sky. It's strange, as if it's leading them deeper into the forest. Dish suggests something. Asel happily asks what it is. Did he really find the seven-flowered garden? He answers that it is not so. It is the waste of the Caledonian boar. They do not understand and ask. Dish explains that if you pour water on it and it really glows, then everything will work out. Asel asks in horror. He is not going to let the queen eat it. Dish answers that this is not so. Alice says that he was not mistaken when he said that the Caledonian boar ate the seven-flowered daisy. If they follow the tracks, they will find the real seven-flowered daisy. Dish says that everything is correct. That's how it is. They come up and see a whole flower bed of this plant. Alice asks if a seven-flowered flower really grows here. Asel says that there are a lot of different herbs here, but she doesn't understand why it glows in rainbow colors, and tells Asel that they didn't tell her about one more property. She asks if there really is another one. They explain to her about the properties of mimicry. The seven-flower can pretend to be another plant. Asel asks in shock if this is serious, so it's all the seven-flowered plant. Then she sees that the plant has disappeared. They explain to him, saying that this is in the nature of these plants. Water is to some extent their enemy. Here, Asel notices something and turns around sharply. The beast Juan also felt something, which Asel asks about. Acel suddenly stands up to protect the princess and shouts to everyone that he is coming. She orders the knights to be ready. The boars run towards them. Then the princess uses earth magic and summons a stone wall, against which the boars beat. The knights shout admiringly to the princess that it is magnificent. They fight together with her in the name of the queen. Alice turns to Acel and the knights, saying that she relies on them. Acel says that they understood her and asks Juan if he understands. Juan and Acel shout that the Caledonian boar is so delicious. Alice asks fearfully what they are thinking, although it is true that Mom's health will suddenly improve. Acel is happy and shouts that the princess has allowed it. Acel shouts that her name is Acel, so the boar should be grateful that she will eat him. Juan also shouts and approaches them with great appetite. The boars run towards them. Acel kills one boar with one swing. The other boar runs away from Juan in horror, and he screams that he will not run away. Let him just dare. In the end, all the boars are defeated. Dish says in surprise that they can do this too. Acel asks how he likes it. Will they be able to eat it? Dish says that he hasn't cooked it yet, but making it tasty, as he believes, is the main task of a cook. Dish examines the boar and then tells Alice that he needs people, preferably those with experience butchering animals. Alice replies that she understands him. Dish tells the knight that he has never messed with it either, so it will be risky. The places in the back, as he thinks, are the same as the herbivores, so they will start cutting it up like a regular boar. The knight replies that everything is accepted. The knights start to cut it up, and then one wonders why they obey him. The other replies that, if you think about it, the princess brought him, and he was really cool when he found the 7-colored flower. He also has a pet monster and recognition from Mrs. Ossel herself. He has reached such heights with his skills. One cannot be surprised why he commands them. They think that this Dish is a terrible person. Dish works, and then says with a smile that they hit the nail on the head. They don't understand and ask what that means. Dish explains that almost all monsters have very little edible meat. Not that it is edible, it is not tasty, but almost all of their meat is edible. He adds that further, everything will depend on time. How much meat? So much time to cut it. He turns to Juan, Acel, and Alice and says that their efforts should not be in vain. He thinks to himself that he wants to try it more than anyone else. Dish's stomach begins to rumble loudly. Acel did not think that Dish would be so hungry. He thinks about the glutton, Acel, the spoiled one, and the lover of luxurious food, Alice. He muses that they all love the Zero Chef's cooking no matter what. In truth, he looks forward to his cooking the most. And Acel and Alice have food when they return home. Juan has the power to destroy monsters and feed on them. But he has none of this because he is Zero. Since childhood, he lived with the forced principle of living or dying. He must have hated it. But he found a business that freed him from this principle, and in the heart of someone like him, there is only one desire. He wants to try it. He takes out something, shouts that it is here. The knights look and think, is he talking about ribs? Dish wipes his hands with a towel and lists the products, salt and garlic, oil for fire bags. Of the available ingredients, this is the only one. Acel asks Dish if it is possible to use it. It was given to her by a cook from the royal kitchen. He sees a square in a paper wrapper and joyfully shouts that it shines like gold. He takes the product and adds it to the dish. He cooks several pots at once. The knights ask the princess if this will do. She answers that it will do. She says that it will do. She says that Dish said to boil the water, but how long should it be kept? Dish explains that they do this to remove the smell of the monster. Let him admit that it would be unpleasant to eat a monster that smelled like raw meat. He says that he showed the removal of the crack to the knights. He asks if he can rely on them. They answer that he can, and he starts cutting the meat, stringing it on a rope and hanging it. Acel is interested. He answers that it is smoked meat. He says that when they fry with smoke, there is an effect. Alice says that the difference is really visible. Acel asks what this means. She explains that all monsters and people who possess magic have such pores through which the magic itself comes out. High-ranking monsters have more of these pores, and the smoke closes them, preventing the magic from escaping. Acel happily tells the princess that she is so cool, she proudly accepts this compliment. Dish begins to sprinkle spices on the meat. The knight nearby says that it is salt and pepper. He turns around and asks where his lime candies are, and then asks another question. Is there any alcohol there by any chance? The knight replies that there is one that is like an antidote. He holds out the bottle. The other takes the bottle and thanks him. He pours the contents onto the meat and begins to massage it vigorously. Asel asks what he is cooking. He replies that he thought that smoked meat also needs seasoning. He says that all that remains is to wait, and he will put the meat of the monster that the knight scudded into the pot. He adds the same salt and pepper to the meat, as well as grated greens. He mixes it all up and adds a little milk beef. He starts to cook it. Everyone looks and admires the smell, saying that it is so wonderful. Asel says that her sense of smell is already at its limit. Alice adds that she can't stand it anymore. Dish asks them to wait a little. He puts the cooked meat on a plate and says that this is Daisha's special dish, fried Caledonian boar meat. The knights scream with delight. How great it is, and so much of it. They admire the presence of such a dish in the wilderness. Asel turns to the princess. She understands and says that this is all their fault because it is their merit. With their help, they found the 7 flowers, which means that her mother will recover. She says that they are all great, and now she asks them to eat as much as they can. And she also suggests saying thank you to their best cook. Everyone thanks him. The knights look at the food and think about gratitude. If you think about it, it's a monster. How can they be grateful for it? Of course, it looks like delicious meat. Here they hear a very loud cry of admiration and do not understand whether this is an attack or a monster. Asel tries it and screams how delicious it is. Juan joins her and also screams with admiration. The knights look at Asel and do not understand why the holy knight behaves this way. They see how the princess floats from the taste of food and are surprised by this. The knights first look and stand for a long time and then offer to try. They bring the meat to their mouths. The captain begins to enjoy the food, and the knights did not expect this. The captain doesn't understand what it is. Meat is just meat. It feels like strength is flowing in. He didn't think that monster meat could be so tasty. He cuts the meat and is surprised at its softness. It was at such a high temperature, and you can feel the potential of this meat. Another one also brings the meat to his mouth and shouts loudly. What he just ate, it's too tasty for him. They doubt it, but it's definitely monster meat. They can't believe it. He thinks it's a wonderful feeling, the sound of biting into the meat. If you just touch the flesh with your tongue a little bit, the meat just melts. The captain muses that it has a slightly salty taste, like an accent. It can't be compared to any meat. He gets up and looks into the distance, sees the house and people. He starts to cry and says in a trembling voice that he wants to see his children, wife, and parents. He sits at the table, trembling, and saying that his soul is crying and asking the other knights to try it too. They hesitantly pick up a fork and start trying it. After trying it, they scream in chorus from shock, and then start eating more actively. Alice looks at them proudly. Asel joyfully praises God for such an outcome. Alice turns to her and says that even these always serious knights, although they ordered them to eat it, but still, she thinks that this is not very good. You can't force them. The taste will then be completely different, but there is no other way. Next time, they will reach out on their own. Asel says that everyone has their eye on the biggest pieces, but the smoked ones are waiting for her. She looks at the hanging meat and her stomach begins to rumble. She thinks that she just ate, but only because of the smell her stomach asks for food again. Alice and Asel try the meat. They are absolutely delighted. They say that smoked meat is completely different. It is very different from simply fried. Alice says that the fat dissolves in the mouth like butter. She does not understand what this divine taste is. The captain turns to the princess and says that he thinks this should be left for the others. He says that everyone eats with both cheeks, so it would be better to tell them not to eat it all. The princess says that he is right. The others need to be treated. Asel says that it will be a sensation. Alice agrees with her. She says that her mother must definitely try it. They return home. The townspeople greet them joyfully. Asel is surprised that everyone is in such a mood. The butler says that this is of course true. Some zero cook prepared something that they have never tried in their lives. He says that this is the first time all these people are eating monster meat, and everyone is shocked that it is so delicious. No wonder it is so noisy here. Asel asks where Dish is now. The butler replies that he is thinking about what to do with the 7-flower garden. Dish stands in front of the plant and ponders. He does not understand at all what to do with it. Everyone says that he is a culinary genius and all that. But now he has little faith in it. He tries this plant and concludes that there is nothing disgusting in the taste. The color is dark. It feels like ordinary grass. He thinks that he can cook it in the simplest way. In principle, you can sauté cheese, milk, and 7-color plant. Estelle turns to Dish and asks if maybe she shouldn't think so much. She'll eat everything she cooks. Dish thanks her, of course, but he wants to cook something that Alice's mother will like. But he doesn't understand what could hook her. He remembers that she didn't like the ice cream. She meant that she had no appetite. He remembers that, and in principle, he didn't prepare it for her. Of course, it is very important for whom he cooks, although he has never done this to anyone. He never asked Estelle and the other guys, and they also did not demand anything from him. Which means that what does she like then? He looks around and sees the dish. This is what that cook has prepared. He sees that it is cold pasta and notices something. An idea is born in his head. He asks those who prepared the cold pasta to show him the list of dishes they had previously prepared for Alice's mother. He says they can't do it because it's very confidential information, so no. Then the cook comes up and holds out a book, asking if this is what he needs. The other cooks look and shout that this is wrong. The cook says that if something happens, he will take responsibility. He asks Dish to take it, hoping that it will be useful to him. Dish thanks his grandfather and says that it turns out he is the boss here. He replies that he is just a worthless cook. He can't even please the princess. Dish starts reading the book and says that he understands about this list. After that, he says that he understood. Estelle asks what he understood. He answers that it dawned on him. He knows what he will cook. In her chambers, Alice's mother, Emma, apologizes, and Sabby says that she has no appetite. Alice insistently tells her mother that it is made from the 7-colored flower. Emma wonders if the 7-colored flower is the same one. Alice joyfully shouts that it is. They got it especially for her. Emma thanks Alice and says that now is not the time. Then Dish comes up and tells the queen that everything is fine. He shows the tray and says that it contains what she wants. Emma wonders if it really contains what she wants, but she has no appetite. Dish opens the lid and shows the dish. The smell immediately spreads throughout the room. Emma looks at them in surprise. Her stomach rumbles. Everyone looks at her in shock. Alice asks her mother what just happened, and Emma blushes and covers her mouth. She doesn't know what to say, and says what a shame it is. Dish confidently says with a smile that it is not shameful, it is the body's response. Emma looks away, her cheeks getting even redder. Dish tells her that this is what she always wanted. She says that it is his special dish, porridge made from 7 flowers. Emma asks in surprise, is it really just porridge made from 7 flowers? The doctors doubt it and say that porridge in such heat, they don't see any logic in it. Emma reaches for the spoon. Everyone is shocked and shouts that the queen reached for the spoon without even seeing the dish itself. They ask Dish what he did with it. Aso orders the doctors to remain silent while Dish puts soup in a bowl. Emma looks at the porridge with great interest. She makes up her mind and says that she will try it. She scoops up some porridge with a spoon and brings it to her mouth. She eats and thinks that it is hotter than she thought, but not to the point that it is impossible to eat. For her, it is the ideal temperature. She continues to eat. She wonders if this sweet taste is just sugar, sweeter than ice cream. The porridge just melts in her mouth. Then she thinks about the 7-colored grass, which is very different from other herbs, and it has such an interesting sound. She still eats and thinks that the most important thing is that it is hot, like magma. The combination of sugar, salt, and 7-colored flour is simply divine. She does not understand how he cooked it like that. The doctors are horrified that she continues to eat. What is happening right now? Is this really their queen, who constantly said that she had no appetite? She is completely different. They watch in shock as she eats porridge with such desire it is immediately obvious that she enjoys the food. Alice looks at her work with joy. Emma feels that she is beginning to be reborn. Alice says to herself that everything worked out. The queen eats her porridge completely and says that it was really tasty. She thanks. Estelle says that the queen liked it. And besides, there was a portion for 4 on this plate. She ate it all by herself. The knights scream in shock and at the same time joyfully say that their queen is recovering. Asel admires. So this is the power of the seven-colored flower. The queen tells her that she was a little mistaken. She looks at her questioningly. Dish says that means he was right. Asel doesn't understand and asks Dish what he's talking about. Dish declares that Alice's mother wasn't sick. Everyone opens their mouths in shock and asks if she really isn't sick. Dish says he figured it out from the list of dishes she was having, like this. The list consists of cold peach spread, lemon ice, bean jelly with ice chips, cold pumpkin soup. He says that everything here is cold. That's why he thought she wasn't sick. He reminds Alice that she also brought her ice cream. He explains that her mother ate only cold food, so she became very sensitive to it. Everyone is shocked by this information. Asel now understands why he cooked porridge and even added the healing seven flower. He says that she, of course, has not fully recovered. Alice turns to her mother and asks if she wanted something hot. Why didn't she say so? She sadly replies that it's because there's nothing she can do. Of course she wanted it. But they kept bringing cold things and she just couldn't say so. She turns to the cooks, who try for her sake, and asks for forgiveness. The knights leaf through the book and say that no, there is no need to blame yourself so much. Alice does not understand who he is and what he is. This guy takes off his mask and says that everyone tried. Thinking about her in such heat, a person would hardly want anything hot. Of course, there are not many positive results from this case. But he can say that that guy impressed him. They shout in shock, is it really Professor Garvin? Of course, Dig himself has no idea who it is and asks. Asel proudly imagines that it is Garvin Westace, one of the greatest adventurers, who is the princess's teacher. Dish says he doesn't understand anything, but it looks like he's some kind of cool guy, well, by the name. That's probably it. He asks if this great man was really disguised as a knight, if this is really his hobby. Garvin says that he was actually in that forest, but he saw them by chance. He really wanted to know what they were doing. He says it's nice to meet him. He introduces himself and asks her to just call him Harry. Dish also introduces herself and says it's nice to meet him too. Everyone looks at them silently because Dish called her Harry. Harry thanks him because no one calls him that, and Asel and the cooks think, can they really call him that? He asks Dish if what he did in that forest was excellent. What kind of skill did he have? Dish is surprised by the question, and then answers that he doesn't have it because he's zero. Harry wonders if he doesn't have the skill. So how did he know about the seven-colored flower then? Dish says he only has knowledge and experience. That's it. Harry suggests that maybe zero is his skill. Suddenly, in complete silence, they hear a stomach rumble. They all turn to Emma in shock. She laughs awkwardly and says that she ate so much, but she is hungry again. The porridge is quickly digested in the stomach. She asks if she can place an order. She says that this time she wants something cooler. She has become hot. She wants something that would increase immunity. She asks Dish what he thinks. Dish confidently asks to leave it to him. He declares that he will prepare the perfect dish. He heads to the kitchen. Dish starts making a meat dish in the kitchen. They come up to him and ask if he wouldn't mind if they help. The cooks stand nearby and look at him. They all shout at once that they are ready and want to help. So let him give orders. The chef says that they all want to learn from him, and he has zero cooking skills. Dish looks, and then says, what can we do with them? So let them try to learn this art. Dish shouts that their cooking is just beginning, holding a knife in her hand. A little later, Asel asks and begs Dish for something, and Dish strictly refuses her, not even giving in to weakness. Asel says that he refused, so she lost her former power. As she already said, regarding the chef's position, in fact, she has one acquaintance in the city, a tavern, and Asel wants him to become the chef for one day. Dish does not understand what she wants from him. They walk down the street, stop at a building. Dish asks if he will really work here. Asel says that he will. She says that they mainly serve fish here, but the thing is that the manager is very ill. She says that it's good that there is no risk to life, and it turned out that now her assistant Nyaris is in charge of the store, so he can get acquainted. The girl with cat ears introduces herself and says that her name is Nyaris. She asks if this is the cook that Asel was talking about. She is very pleased to meet you. Asel says with displeasure that this person does not know how to cook at all, and she is indignant and asks what she is saying. Asel says that therefore, until Nora gets better, could he not work instead of her? Dish says that, in principle, he is free now. It will be easier than cooking in the castle. Asel happily asks if he will really take it on. He answers that he will. Dish introduces himself and says that next to him is his friend Juan. He points to the skeleton and says that he is after the broth. The skeleton is indignant. Why did he say that? Dish tells Nyaris that it is nice to meet him, and the skeleton is indignant and asks not to ignore him. Dish looks around, examines the kitchen, and says that this is a good tavern. The atmosphere is immediately felt. He remembers the dish and tells Nyaris that he will only prepare one dish. She says with displeasure that they are a canteen after all, and one dish is not quite suitable. Dish asks, what if this dish is very, very tasty? She asks if there is such a thing. He looks around and says that of course there is. Asel asks what these ingredients are. Nyaris looks closely and asks what these ingredients are. She sees a black writhing creature and screams that it is a demon fish. Of course, there were people who caught it and wanted to try it, but the poison poisoned absolutely everyone. It has the ability of lightning speed, feigning death to attack prey, especially humans. This fish is too dangerous to be used as food. Asel lifts up this demon fish and shouts that it is just like in the legends. It really is a demon fish. The skeleton is also scared, and Asel laughs and asks how she feels about her strength. Nyaris says in fear that strength has nothing to do with it. She doesn't understand at all, and says that it's the first time she's seen a person who caught him like that. Dish holds the fish in her hands. Nyaris screams even more, simultaneously admiring and saying that she wants the same. Dish says that if you know the secret trick, then anyone can catch it. You just need to bend it on the third finger. He shows how to do it. Asel tries and happily shouts that she succeeded. Nyaris also touches it and shouts that it's great. Dish says that now the fangs need to be removed. Asel understands that it won't be easy. How will he do it, she asks herself this question. Dish puts the fish on the table and then begins to hammer the nail into the fish. The fish's tail twitches in the process. Asel understands that he nailed it with a nail exactly, so its movement will be limited. She watches carefully. Dish cuts the fish along the body and pulls out the insides. Asel does not understand how he managed to do it. Nyaris looks at the fish and is surprised at how beautiful it looks. Dish says that this is only the beginning. There is poison in its blood. Nyaris again remembers that this is a demon fish. Dish explains that if they remove the blood with heat, everything will be fine. First, he decides to remove the skin. He says out loud that they will cool it with regular water, make cuts, sticks in there, specifically into this pulp. Nyaris asks him if he is really going to fry on magic stones. He answers that it is not so, and that she guessed wrong. He has something better. It is a special thing of Daisha, citrine. Nyaris looks closely and says that this is a coal stove. She asks if there will be too much smoke. Dish answers that it should be like that. It lets the fire through perfectly. Asel, as soon as she hears the word smoke, she immediately remembers that Caledonian boar, that wonderful smell. Dish smiles and says that it is so. After a while, he opens the lid and sees the meat. Says that it seems good. The smell opens up and spreads to all areas. Asel smells it and says that she can't wait any longer. What a scent. Nyaris also smells it and remembers that her mother once told her about something. She said that, of course, cooking on coal is good, but on magic stones is better, she asks. Is that right? Asel joins in and says that she also heard about this somehow and asks for the meat to cook faster. At this time, Dish opens the lid of some jug. The girls shout that it is sauce. They do not understand why it is black. Dish takes a brush, dips it in the sauce, and begins to coat the fish. Magic happens. Asel smells this smell. She thinks it's lovely. The skeleton notices something and twitches. Asel asks in fear what is there, calling it a skeleton from the broth. They see that there are a lot of people on the street. Asel tells herself that there is no need to be surprised. It has always been like this everywhere. Dish announces that he is finished. He says that this is a special dish, fried demon fish. Asel and Nyaris begin to try it. They all shout, including one, that it is delicious. People outside look and look at them with great appetite. Asel gobbles up the fish without stopping. Nyaris describes that it is crunchy on the outside, but the meat inside is so soft. She has tried it for the first time. Dish says that this is the result of using citrine. He asks, isn't it true that the aroma is also not bad? Asel says that she also noticed. She would never in her life have thought that this is a demon fish. She screams that this is impossible. She thinks about the sauce that drips down like that. Dish says that he also calls it broth. Nyaris wonders if it is really sugar. Asel looks and says that it is somehow not sugary. She wonders what it is. Asel guesses and asks Dish about it, and he says that it is so and that she is right. She takes out and shows lime candies. Nyaris understands and asks again if these are really the same ones. He hands her a candy and tells her to try it. She takes the candy hesitantly, looks at it for a long time, and then throws it into her mouth. She instantly screams how sweet it is. She thinks that this candy is not inferior to the fish. Asel says that is why he used them. She thinks that it is an excellent solution. Dish says that it's not just the sauce, it was fried on them too. This combination of deliciousness is just perfect. Nyaris says that it's cool, then addresses Dish and says that it's great. She asks what skill he has. Asel proudly says that this is it. Perhaps she won't believe it. But his name is Dish and he is a zero cook. Nyaris shouts that she heard about him. He saved the princess from monsters and cured the queen. People are shouting that they want it too. Have they really opened again? They are all hungry and don't understand how not to be led by this smell. Asel looks at them with a smile. And Dish apologizes and says that this is all for today. He asks them to wait for 3 days. Dish says that if they wait, she will cook this fish for them. Saying this, he pushes Nyaris forward. Nyaris freezes for a second and then screams in horror. What is he saying? Asel agrees. Dish asks Nyaris if she doesn't want to cook something tasty for her mother. Nyaris starts thinking. Dish says that he thinks that she will recover right away if she makes her happy. He promises that it won't be difficult. He says that there is nothing special here. She saw how it is done and the result of the cooking. He is sure that her mother will be surprised. She sadly says that, however, he is a zero in cooking. Dish says with a smile that even he, the one who has no skills, cooked it. In cooking it is not skill that is important, but passion. Anyone can do it if he really wants to. Nyaris is silent at first and then shouts that she understood him, so she takes on this. Dish says that then the training starts right now. He says with a sly smile that 3 days without sleep is easy. Nyaris looks at him questioningly. Has it really been 3 days without sleep? Dish drags Nyaris along and suggests starting with getting ingredients. She screams in panic and asks to wait. Asel stands still and watches this picture. Thus, Nyaris found herself in the shackles of the terrible cook, so her training begins right now. Asel stands by the lake and says that Mrs. Wendell has called her and Dish here to the lake for some important matter. She sees the lady and thinks that it looks like they will be waiting for someone or something. The mermaid sits by the water and looks into the distance. Asel gathers up her courage and thinks that the spirit of water himself called them specially. She does not understand what this is. She decides that she needs to be on guard. Then someone calls her. Dish says that Dish's special dish, warm milk soup, is ready. Asel's facial expression immediately changes, and she wishes herself a bon appetit. She starts eating and says that in such cool weather it is just right to be warm, so that there is a reason to look forward to winter. Dish smiles and says that he is glad of it. Mrs. Wendell looks at them and sighs, saying that they have not changed a bit. Asel turns to Mrs. Wendell and says that she wanted to ask her something. She asks how long she has known Dish. She listens and understands that she hasn't told them about it yet. She says that it was in the summer 2 years ago. One man threw a cursed sword into the river nearby. Asel remembers and thinks about that incident. She says that Asel then caught the culprit. She continues her story and says that the river became completely polluted. It turned purple. Asel remembers this and says that the sight was terrible. Dish is surprised that 2 years have passed. She tells Wendell that she was furious then. Wendell says that of course she was furious. This man did an unforgivable thing. 2 years ago, in the pouring rain, everyone was talking excitedly about the spirit's anger. A man asked the elder what it meant. The elder answered that Mrs. Wendell was beside herself because of the pollution of the river. Many people died near the river. He says with great sadness that almost everything has become lifeless. All the vegetation is also spoiled. If it is left like this, it will be bad. The elder shouts in rage that it is necessary to tame the spirit's anger, otherwise the world will be completely destroyed. In the forest on the ground lies little Dish. He is told to wake up. Dish barely opens his eyes and asks the stranger who he is. In front of him sits the spirit of Mrs. Wendell. He is surprised that she is so huge. He asks who she is. And she is indignant. Does he really not know who she is? He replies that no, he does not know what she is talking about at all. Wendell says that perhaps it is he who has created all this chaos. He replies that this is not so. He simply lost consciousness from hunger. Mrs. Wendell says that she already thought it was him. She was surprised that she was hungry. How did it happen? Dish raises her head, and in an indifferent tone asks to answer him who she is. She ambitiously says that she will tell him who she is. Dish understands and asks if this means that this rain is her doing. She proudly says that it is. This is her power. She laughingly calls him little and says, bragging, that this is not the only thing she can do. Dish yells at her in anger, calling her stupid. What did she do? She doesn't understand and asks what's wrong with him. How dare he raise his voice? Dish demands that she stop the rain, because all the vegetation will be ruined. She replies that this cannot be done. The person who did this must be punished. Dish asks again if she really wants to punish him. She says that if he allows her to eat him, then she will stop this rain. She smiles maliciously. Dish says that it is not tasty at all. She laughs and says with a smile that then she will eat the one who needs to be punished. Dish shouts at her that she is stupid and that she should only eat when she is hungry and not in order to punish someone. Dish says that he is sure that she is angry because she is hungry. She does not understand and does not know how to tell him this. Then Dish says that he will cook her something. The rain continues to pour. Dish stands in front of a huge leaf of a plant. Like with an umbrella, he begins to think. He is surprised that she can change the size of her body. She is now the size of him. He adds, asking to listen to him. She has something to tell her, of course. He thinks that polluting the river is bad, but you can involve others in this. He explains to her that innocent people may suffer from her actions and that she cannot do that. And she says that for spirits, all people are the same. They do not focus on anyone in particular. If they are to punish, then they must punish everyone at once. Dish says with a smile that is, she does not remember faces at all. He admits that he understands her. He also remembers names poorly. Dish asks her not to be so angry. He offers her that candy, which turned out to be surprisingly tasty. Wendell looks at his tail in surprise and then asks Dish to listen. She asks if this means he is going to cook food from the monster now. Dish asks her not to make such a face. He guarantees that it will be very tasty. Wendell sees and is horrified. In front of them is Adamanti, a monster that has a large shell, the king of the seas. He has thick limbs and they resemble large roots. There are membranes on his feet. He lays eggs in the mountains, burying them in the ground. She asks him in horror if this is really his goal. Dish says that she only lays eggs once every few years and that it happens on particularly rainy days. She thanks Wendell because it was thanks to her rain that she got out. She is of course happy to help, but she is worried and asks if it is too big. Dish replies that everything is fine. If they don't go to him themselves, then nothing will happen to them. Then Adamanti suddenly raises his head and starts screaming. Dish gets scared and asks what's wrong with him. Wendell looks on in horror. 4 years ago, when he saw him, he was not so aggressive, and Wendell understands that. Rather, he is not aggressive, but as if he is in pain. She examines him and says that the color of his body is changing. So this is already her task. As she thinks, Dish asks her to try so that it doesn't hurt him. She says that she knows. Now she's not going to eat him. She's just going to relieve him of pain. Wendell goes down to him and says that if you look at it like that, he's quite cute. The monster suddenly attacks, and the spirit says that she is also angry now. She calls on her magic and appears above the monster with the help of water. Dish looks and admires that she created a water cage. Now the monster is inside a water ball. Wendell says that it is better this way. That is her power. She looks at the ball and says that she was right after all. They see from below that a sword is stuck into the turtle from below. Dish understood. It was very hard for him. It was tormenting him. Wendell said, "Well, he got it pretty good too." She pulls the sword off him with help. In an instant, the water in which the turtle is swimming changes color. From a dark, dirty color, it turns into a transparent, clean one. She puts the turtle back in the water, and she proudly swims to Dish with a grin on her face. Dish shouts at her that she is cool, and she replies that it is naturally so. She is a spirit. How did he even think about her? He smiles widely and tells her that she is right. He asks her if it is a cursed sword. She replies that it is. She thought that it got into the sea because of the current. Dish thinks and then guesses, so that is why she called for rains, to cleanse the river. Wendell says that's true. She won't just make it rain at will, but they are people. She sees Dish smiling and laughing. She doesn't understand why. He replies that he thought that she was so kind, thought about people and did not kill this monster. He thinks that she is very good. She screams that she is not kind at all, only to people. Spirits should be kind to everyone. Let him not think wrongly. Dish smiles and says that then she is even kinder. She looks angrily, and then sighs and says that she still cannot forgive people. She looks back and sees Adam and Tai smiling at her. She asks Dish if it's okay that he left him. He replies that everything is fine. His goal is not Adam and Tai himself. Wendell is surprised, so that's it. She thinks that she is beginning to understand what his goal is. Dish shouts for her to follow him. They approach the place. He shouts that he found it. They see in front of them an egg, which is stuck in the ground. Steam is coming out of it. Wendell shouts that it is an egg. He shot an egg into the air. Dish picks up the egg and says that the adamantium egg is very hard. Sometimes there were even cases when just an egg caused pain with its blow. There are some crows nearby, which Wendell is asking about. Dish says that's right. They ate him recently. Wendell says in surprise that for people, of course, the animals themselves will become teachers in the wild. Dish suggests finding more eggs before the rain stops, or else someone else will eat them. Wendell agrees and follows him, and Dish tells the adamantium eggs to get ready. Wendell talks dreamily about adamantium dishes. She can't wait to try them. Dish points and says they'll try this first. Wendell says it's ketchup. It has such a strong smell. She asks again if it's really ketchup. He says that this is a killer tomato. At first glance, it is an ordinary tomato, but in fact, it is a dangerous monster. When a person or animal approaches it, it attacks with lightning, opens its mouth, and bites. Every year, many people suffer because of it. Wendell is surprised by such a monster. She asks how he made ketchup out of it. He answers that the trick is to smell the smoke. She does not understand and asks again about the smoke. He says that when the tomato killer inhales the smell of smoke, it becomes asphyxiated, and while it is in this state, it must be quickly collected and heated. The smoke will block the flow of magic, so the magic will also remain in the ketchup. He adds that the killer tomato is very sour, unlike a regular tomato. Wendell asks if that is true. He says that it is because there are internal organs. She will see, when they cut it open, that there will be digestive fluid left. Wendell says he understands him. It is because of this liquid that ketchup is so spicy. He shouts joyfully that it is true. He asks if it is true that cooking is so much fun. He names the ingredients, and Wendell says that they are rather bizarre products. The king of the bow has 4 limbs, on top of which there is a crown, because it looks out of the ground. Adventurers fall into a trap. The whispering mushroom is a harmful, evil monster. Small, sits in the ground. Its presence causes allergies. He cooks and says out loud that they will fry the whispering mushroom with the king of Volcom, adjust the taste with salt, add madaraj grass and pour ketchup on it. Wendell stands nearby and shouts at the wonderful smell. She looks at it and says, "It's so red. Absolutely perfect." Dish cracks an egg and pours out the liquid. Wendell watches and marvels at the contrast. She sees white and wants to guess what it is. Dish immediately says that it is egg milk. She still does not understand and looks at him questioningly. Dish explains that the adamantine egg contains milk. The embryos become larger if they sit in the ground for more than 90 days, and the milk contains magical power. Wendell says in surprise, "Wow." Dish asks, "Isn't it true that adamantium is quite interesting?" He mixes everything and says that she will be pleasantly surprised when she tries its taste. He definitely guarantees it. He fries an egg and then throws it in the air to flip it over and fry the other side. Wendell watches and is amazed at his skills. He puts the egg on top of the cereal and says it's ready. He cuts the egg open. Dish says that this is Dish's special dish, rice omelet made from adamantium egg. Wendell is genuinely happy, takes a spoon and starts to try it. She starts screaming with joy and delight. She says how delicious it is. It just melts in her mouth. She can't believe that it's made from a monster. She adds that this egg is quite salty. Dish explains this by saying that the monster itself lives in salty seawater. She now understands why this is so. She says that the smell and taste seem to merge together, a good accent in the ketchup because of the killer tomato. Then she begins to see something in front of her. She wonders if this is really a mirage that Dish's dish is creating. Even she is a spirit. She has never seen anything like it. She admires what an effect. She is interrupted by Dish's voice, who calls her. He asks her with a smile how she likes the omelet. Is it tasty? She says that it is something average, although she would not mind more. Dish asks why she did this. She liked it. He asks to wait a bit and prepares another omelet, throwing it into the air. However, his omelet falls to the ground. He looks at Wendell in fear. She looks back. He says that it was an accident. 10 times it should work out exactly. She screams at him not to lie. Everything always works out for him. He says that everything is fine. He will eat it himself, so she will eat the next one. She begins to wonder who he really is. She thinks that he is quirky, but she understands that he is such a talented cook. She thinks that what those people did cannot be forgiven. If it is forgiven, then it will be worse. No matter how much food he prepares for her, even if it is delicious, she will not forgive people. But she has other thoughts. She feels that he is a special person, even though he is a zero. This boy cooks better than any royal chef. He tells Wendell that it is ready, thereby tearing her away from her thoughts. He made it so that on the omelet, there is a request written to eat it. She reads it and looks at Dish. Dish says that he can no longer look at such a face after eating the food he prepared. She asks in shock if he understands. He does. He interrupts and replies that, of course he understands. He is a cook after all. He says that he killed so many lives so that he would have something to feed himself with. It will be odd if it continues like this. Wendell asks if he is not afraid. Dish says that is why he has a request. He asks to eat him with pleasure. Wendell looks at him for a long time and does not understand what he wants at all. Dish explains that he gave part of himself as an ingredient, so he should eat it with pleasure. Wendell looks on awkwardly and in disbelief as Dish stands confidently waiting for action. Wendell starts laughing loudly. She says that he is so interesting. He angrily says that he is actually speaking in all seriousness. Wendell says that she can see in his eyes that he is truly stupid and honest. He asks what she has decided in the end, whether she will eat him. She replies that she has decided that she will eat him. She says that, however, she does not have such a skill. Therefore, she cannot fulfill his request yet. Dish looks at her disappointedly. Wendell says that this is true, and that is why she is thinking of postponing this matter. He asks what this means. She replies that it is the same when people leave something tasty for later, like dessert. She promises that she will eat it, but not now. Dish is sincerely happy and shouts, "Hooray!" Wendell is frightened by such a reaction. She says incomprehensibly that he is so happy. She reflects that he has no family. He is alone, but there is something about him. She says that the rain will soon stop. It is time for them to say goodbye. He calls her by name. She turns to his request. He asks her if they can meet again. She thinks about it, and then sighs tiredly. She asks why he suddenly became so upset. She is a spirit of water. She is always nearby. He happily says that this means that they will see each other again. Wendell replies that, of course, in that case, he must always be ready to feed her and without mistakes. She disappears, diving into the water. Dish remains in place. The water evaporates. The clouds dissolve. Rays of light are visible from the sky. He clenches his fists and says that he will go cook. This is how Wendell also finishes her story, saying that this was how their first meeting was. Dis adds that she was still strange, and she says, "Who would talk?" calling him a zero cook. She remembers, and says that among them, the spirits and gods, opinions about him were divided, but in the end, his deliverance was postponed. She turns away and says that she had nothing else to do. Wendell turns and notices that she didn't tell him. She suggests that he turn around. He obeys and turns around. He sees a shocked Asel with her mouth open. He doesn't understand and asks her what's going on, and she's indignant that he's even asking. She shouts that it's nothing. Do they really want to say that Dish decided that incident 2 years ago? Dish himself gets scared and asks her to calm down, and she screams even more. How can she be calm? She asks if Mrs. Wendell will ever eat him. She is, of course, glad that he was able to calm her down then. She is grateful to him, but she asks him to promise her that he will never again put his life at risk. He awkwardly answers that he couldn't do otherwise, because she would not have calmed down. Asel shouts that this is not so. This is not something for which he should be held responsible. It is not his fault that the river is polluted. Dish is surprised by Asel's reaction, and she asks him not to throw away his life so easily, because for her, he is a very dear friend. He smiles and tells her that he understood her. After all, he was alone then, so he made such a decision. But now he is not alone. He remembers the whole royal family, Juan and the skeleton. He apologizes to Asel and says that she is right. Wendell says that they are such interesting guys. She tells Asel not to worry. They will not do anything bad to Disha. She raises her head and says that it will happen soon. Asel also raises her gaze and says that the lake has frozen over. She sees some kind of shadow. A small fairy appears in front of them. Ice crystals are coming out of her. Wendell says that it is an ice spirit, so to speak. She is also a water spirit, so she owns ice. They can accept her as their own. Asel says that she has never heard of her. Wendell explains that it is a seasonal spirit. They ask what she does. Wendell replies that she announces the coming of winter. Do they see ice floes flying through the air? She tells them to raise their heads and open their mouths. She raises her head and asks if these are really stars, but something falls on her head. Asel says that it hurts. She takes a piece and sees that it is ice. She looks up again, her gaze blurring. She shouts joyfully that it's sweet and that it's candy. Wendell explains that it's called star snow, ice and magic combined. Fragments of ice fall to the ground. Wendell says that they, the spirits of water, were also born from sugar particles. That's why magic has such a taste. She says proudly, putting her hand on her chest, how beautiful the spirits are. Dish is surprised, says that, wow, he hears about this for the first time. Asel and Juan are chewing. She says that she is already full. Asel looks around and notices that the ice spirit is gone. Wendell explains that her work is over and will be over soon. Asel does not understand that it will be over soon. They both look up at the same time and see snow falling from the sky. Asel says with a smile that it is already winter. For her, this year was so unusual. She thinks about meeting Dish. She will never forget this man. As soon as she closes her eyes, she immediately floats up. Here, in complete silence, her stomach rumbles loudly. Her face twists with awkwardness. Dis asks her in surprise if she is hungry again. She answers with red cheeks that she is hungry. Dis says that there is nothing to be done. Then he will please her. He invites her with him. After Asel thanks Dish for the food, she says she will help him clean up. Dish does not refuse. Asel notices something on the shelf. Dish sees her uncertainty and bewilderment. He says that it is an ingredient. Asel shouts that she thought so. She asks what this ingredient is. Dish apologizes to her and explains that it is a lost ingredient. She doesn't understand. It was about 9 years ago. He, abandoned in the forest, only tried to survive. Even if he knew that he could eat monsters, it was still difficult for him, a child. He could barely walk, his stomach was growling. He hadn't eaten for 3 days. He suddenly lifts up, recognizing some smell. He looks around happily and says that it is very tasty. He runs to the end and sees a red stone in front of him. He knocks on it and happily says that it is hard, but not like a stone. He admires its aroma and says that it is edible. He wishes himself a pleasant appetite and begins to bite. But then he is thrown back completely. He hears a voice that screams that it hurts. Then he realizes that it is a huge dragon, who is looking at him sternly. The dragon turns to him and asks what he is doing on his back. Dish is surprised that he can even talk. Right, he read in a book that dragons are almost as developed as people, in terms of intelligence. Dish says that he is glad that he understands him. He asks with shining eyes if he can have a piece of his scale. The dragon indignantly shouts that he is stupid. He is the strongest of all magical beasts. He is never lost to a man. Does he really think that he will give him part of his scales? Dish offendedly calls him greedy, and he angrily shouts what he just said. He says to listen to him carefully, because he's a red dragon, the only survivor of his kind. He says that he lives longer than people and is even stronger than them. Let him stop his impudent behavior. Let him leave right now and then. He will forgive his words. Dish says that he already sees that he is stronger than him. The dragon does not understand. Dish says that this is why he wants to make a dish from the scales, having tried where she could say how delicious it is. The dragon doesn't understand and asks, "This is scales. Is it used as an ingredient? Usually only for weapons." Dish asks if he looks like an adventurer. The dragon admits that he doesn't. Dish asks if he doesn't understand. His scales smell very delicious. The dragon starts sniffing himself in surprise, asking if this is really true. He can't even believe it. Let him not think about it. He's not happy about it at all. Then the dragon realizes something and shouts that he has understood his intentions. He wants his heart, saying that if he eats it, he will gain immortality. Dish thinks about this and asks if it is really tasty. The dragon replies that this is not so, because he understands that he does not know, because he has not tried, and he will die if he takes his heart. Dish says he is interested. The dragon is surprised by his words. Dish says that now he wants his scale, but not his heart. The dragon honestly admits that he is in shock. The dragon honestly admits that he is in shock. The dragon looks away and tells Dish that he can have a piece. The dragon says that he has developed a slight interest in his cooking. Dish approaches the scales and opens his mouth with great appetite. The dragon screams loudly and long. He says that he is not yet mentally prepared, and he asks him to get ready faster because he is hungry. The dragon thinks to himself, "What kind of a child is this? Does he even realize what he is doing?" Dish replies that, of course he realizes. He is Dish, after all. The dragon shouts at him to be careful and be gentle. Dish replies that he knows it. The dragon shouts that it hurts, and he asks why he shouted so much. And the dragon tells him to shut up. It all happened because of him. Dish tears off a scale for him about 3. The dragon even cries. Dish says that the scales are lighter than he thought. Although there are so many different layers, he sniffs and admires the smell. It will definitely turn out delicious. The dragon watches them, and Dish begins to clean the scales. He says that he seems to have removed the crust. The dragon says that he is quite good with a knife and will not think that these are the movements of a child. He asks if he really learned from someone. Dish replies that he did it a little when he worked in cooking, and then he did it himself. The dragon asks if that is really his skill. He replies that it is not so. He does not have such a skill. Dish says that they are called zeros. The dragon says that he is surprised that he can cook without any skill. Dish says that the good thing about cooking is that you don't need any skill. The dragon is surprised by his words. Sometimes such people are born without skills. Their life is doomed to failure, because without skills they are nobody in this world. There are even cases when a mother kills a baby in order to free herself from the burden, and thereby also the child from suffering. He doesn't understand who this kid is, who is standing in front of him now. He is so cheerful. Having been born in the worst conditions, he continues to live with a smile on his face. Of course, he wants to try what he cooks. Dish boils everything and adds a scale and then decides to leave it for a while. The dragon asks what he is cooking. He answers that it is broth. He sniffs and says that it smells like the sun, immediately bringing back memories of when in the past he lived with one woman. He asks Dish to cook faster. He says that it will be ready soon. He salts the vegetation that he found nearby, covers the scales with a cloth to separate it from the broth, and adds the vegetation there. He puts it down and says that a special dish, dragon scale broth, is ready. The dragon doesn't understand, and says that he doesn't even know such a thing. Dish wonders how it will eat. The dragon says not to worry and watch. Then he turns into a man. He holds out the cup. He sniffs it and enjoys the aroma. But it's all about taste. Even if the smell is good, the taste may not be quite the same. He tries the broth. He shouts that it is delicious. Excellent. He would not even have thought that it was broth. But this is the aftertaste. The effect of time. In his entire life, he has never tasted anything like it. He thinks that the vegetation goes well with the broth. He says out loud that it is an unusual combination. He does not understand why it is so tasty, or rather why he did not know before that it was so tasty. Having lived for decades, he did not even know this about himself. He turns to Dish and asks how he knew that it would taste good. Dish replies that he didn't know, only now he realized it too. And it was his first time meeting a dragon, but something came into his head that maybe it would be tasty. Experiments with mixing, the courage to risk such an adventure, everything, of course, immediately recedes upon learning that he is zero. But despite this is his skill, his whole essence. He is interested in what skill God has gifted him with. After that, they talked a lot about the past. What could be better than a wonderful atmosphere where they talk while eating something so delicious? For the first time in a long time, he has fun. He thanks Dish and asks what he will do. He replies that he does not know yet, but he wants to cook something from those ingredients that no one has cooked from, because this place is a field for experiments. The dragon asks, "Does that mean he won't come down from here?" He answers that it is so. The dragon says that it is so similar to him. He says that there is an old tree there. Monsters won't get him there. He thinks that he needs this place. Dish thanks him. Dragon says he will like it. Dish asks if he is really going somewhere. He answers that he wants to see the world again. Having met him, he realized that there is still so much unknown, so he wants to fix it. Dish says that he is a little sorry, because finally, he has a companion. The dragon says that his journey will not last very long. He will also have new companions. He says it was very tasty. Let him be proud of himself. Even though he has no skill, he was able to satisfy the dragon himself. Dish shouts at him that next time he will cook better. He tells Asel about this and apologizes that he cannot use it yet. Asel says that this is proof of her promise and it cannot be broken. He says that she is surprised by the story, and she says that she is tired of being surprised. Asel says that she will prepare for this day because perhaps he may return tomorrow or even today. He is thinking about something. Asel asks what it is, and he, closing his eyes, replies that nothing like that. At this time, that same dragon approaches the tree where they are together with Asel.